Fox Valley,
Here.
Frank Hornberg,
Here.
Green Bay,
Here.
Harry and Laura Nor,
Here.
Captawish,
Here.
Lakeshore,
Here.
Marinette,
Yes.
Northwoods,
Here.
Oconto River, Shawpaca, Southeast, Southern,
Here.
Wild Rivers,
Here.
Clear Waters,
Here.
River Valley, Wisconsin River Valley, and Wolf River.
Yep, we're here.
Okay, so for no's, I got Aldo Leopold, Antigo, Blackhawk, Oconto River, Shawpaca, Southeast, and Wisconsin River Valley.
You can count me in for Southeast. I can represent them today.
Okay, cool.
And I believe Wisconsin River Valley, I thought Kirk was going to be on, but he might be joining us a little bit late. So if I see him
Alright.
pop on, I'll let you know.
Okay,
Thanks for that. We certainly have a quorum. A majority of chapters are here. So that's good to see. Next order of business would be the approval of the February 6th, 2021 meeting minutes. I hope you all had a chance. I sent those out. All had a chance to look those over. If there aren't any changes that need to be made, I would happily entertain a motion to approve those.
So move.
Thanks, Tim. Anybody like to second that?
Second. I'll second it, Marinette.
Thanks, Dale. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call to vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say no. So moved. Thank you. The next order of business is the treasurer's report, which I just realized I don't have open yet. So hold on a sec. Just give me 1 minute. I'll pull that up and put that on the screen so we can all see that while Gary goes through it. All right, are you guys all seeing somebody give me a thumbs up? Are you guys seeing the treasurer's report?
Yeah.
I
Okay.
see it.
Perfect. Gary, I'm going to turn it over to you then.
Hold on a second. And I
We'll
quit
wait for you.
smoking 30 years ago. It's more or less a bare bones treasurer's report. We have 218,901.27 on hand. Of that, money dedicated is 133,000 as stated there. By the way, anybody wants a hard copy of this, send me an email. I will get it out to you as soon as I can. If it's today, you'll get it today. If you send me an email tomorrow, you won't get it for 3 weeks because I'm leaving. Anyhow, I propose a budget for the period April, our fiscal year is what that's on. And right now, the only thing in that budget that has been approved is with Trout, which is about $20,000. And then I put in $2,000 for operating expenses, which is a little high, but I like to be on the safe side. Now, also in the budget somewhere, there should be, I think we are committed to having a Trout or a youth camp this year. And we're more or less committed to the lobbyists, but I have not seen any votes on this. The lobbyist has been $15,000 in the past. And the last youth camp we had, our expenses for that were about $7,800, but we've got roughly $2,500 received towards paying for that. So that really, if we put them in there, that'll roughly take $20,000 off the numbers that are down there now. So what you see is that we're in really nice shape. Estimated income for the period is 31,000. That includes our national rebate. Roughly what we've been getting from the license plate, which, and if the last 2 months are any indication, we're going to be getting probably a little bit more than in the last fiscal year, which is what I go by when I do this. As a side note, we received about $17,000 in unencumbered donations in the past year. Our members and supporters came through in a huge way for us. So bottom line is right now we're in great financial shape. End of report.
That's great. Thanks, Gary. Appreciate you pulling the numbers together for us. And it's great to see that, you know, coming out of COVID, like despite not having a banquet last year, that the council's still in pretty good financial shape. So I think that's a testament to a lot of the hard work that's gone in over the last decade to put us in a good spot. So appreciate all the efforts all around from everyone on that. Does anybody have questions for Gary about the treasurer's report?
No questions, just a comment. I guess we always, for the youth camp, it was approved for $5,000 for the youth camp. If you want to plug that in the future, Gary.
Well, Lynn, we're about to do expenditure requests. So why don't you hold that for maybe like 3 minutes, and then let's revisit that. We'll formally take that up. Any other discussion on the treasurer's report? All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to accept the treasurer's report as presented to us.
This is Lynn, so moved.
Thanks, Lynn. Anyone want to second that?
This is Michael. I'll second that.
Thank you, Michael Williamson. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll call it to a vote. All those in favor of approving the treasurer's report, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, so moved. Thank you, Gary. You're off the hook.
You're welcome.
The next item on the agenda, let me see here. I'll just switch over here. You guys all seeing this, I hope. So we have the expenditure requests. I'm going to ask Tom Lager to take a minute, and he had put together a request letter to me. I apologize, I didn't send it out. I had several other documents that were going out, and I didn't want to get things too cluttered in your inbox. But he had put together a request from TU Cares for $1,000, and I'll maybe let Tom speak to that for just a minute.
Yeah, Jake Lemon is leading a project that we've been calling the Groundwater project in central Wisconsin, and a number of TU Cares volunteers and have signed up to help with the project. And what we're doing, we're working with the DNR to develop a data set, an ongoing data set measuring the groundwater flows at 10 sites in a handful of trout streams on the eastern side of the central sands area of Wisconsin. And that's an area that is being heavily pumped for agriculture primarily. And the groundwater levels are fluctuating, and in some cases they've been documented as being problematic and causing a loss of flows in trout streams. So I think 2 years ago, the state council invested $2,000 in the project to help fund equipment and travel expenses for Jake Lemon. I'm asking for $1,000 on behalf of Jake Lemon. And Jake Lemon, for those who don't know him, he works for TU. He's the Eastern, I always forget his title, but he's the Eastern, he works out of Michigan. He's the Eastern Sport Fisheries Volunteer guy. That's a terrible title. I can't remember it.
Eastern Angler Science.
Hey, there we go. Mike always comes through with the data. Or anyway, we've experienced some equipment losses over the last 2 years due to theft and then also due to equipment use resulted in some damage to it. So what we're asking for is $1,000 to cover our anticipated expenses. 500, about 550 of that, I think, is for replacement of lost gear, and we're anticipating a continuation of some of those challenges throughout the next couple of years because floods and vandalism can impact the sites that we have, and that results in some loss of equipment. So that's why we're asking for $1,000. And if anybody wants to see the official letter requesting it, I can provide that.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate that. Does anybody have questions for Tom about the expenditure request? All right. Hearing that, I would entertain a motion to approve the $1,000 expenditure request for TU Cares.
This is Gary. I'll make a motion to accept the to spend $1,000.
Thanks, Gary Horvath. Anybody like to second that?
This is
Kevin.
Graham. I'll second it.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Graham Hodson.
Thanks.
Thanks, Graham. Appreciate that. Any other further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call to a vote. All those in favor of approving $1,000 towards the TU Care groundwater monitoring program, say aye.
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 All those opposed? So moved. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you all.
Tom. Tom, I'll ask you to follow up with Gary to make the appropriate
Yes, I'll do that.
receipt of those funds. So at this time, I guess it was brought to our attention that we have not made a motion this year to support our youth camp, which I think at the last meeting there was maybe some doubt as to whether it was going to happen or not due to COVID, but it seems like coming out of that, it's going to happen this year. So Lynn, do you want to maybe revisit this, what you had mentioned before?
Sure. Well, in the past, the council has always generously put together 5,000 for us, just to kind of match what we get from the chapters in residual for the kids to cover all the expenses. So I guess I would like to make a request that we continue with that and have the council put forward $5,000 for the youth camp this year.
Lynn, may I interject here? Right now, 2 years ago, the camp cost us $7,800 plus, and we've got roughly donations of $2,500 at this point in time. I'm going to suggest you ask for $6,000. Yes,
Okay,
that's me telling you guys to spend more money.
Okay, the money that you received right now does not have 16 of the kids. With what the chapters donate or put forward for each chapter comes out to about 5,000. So we actually will end up with 10,000 plus the monies that people have been generously donating in. So some of the monies that you have are basically out of pocket contributions, and we still have, I have a check here for Key Apta Wishes, I think it is. Let me, and no, I'm sorry, Harry and Laura Knorr. And then there's probably 7 chapters that have not paid for their kids. So all said and done, we should end up over that 7,800 or 8,000 that has costed us in the past. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. That's fine.
So we should be okay with the 5,000, and then I'll reevaluate after this year where we end up with everything, and we can run from there.
That sounds great. Thanks for clarifying. Anyone like to make a motion to approve the support for the youth camp?
This is Kim McCarthy. I'll make a motion that we dedicate $5,000 to the youth camp.
Thanks, Kim. Anyone second that?
Second,
Who was the second?
Tim.
Tim Fraley? Thanks,
Yep.
Tim. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call it to a vote. All those in favor of the youth camp expenditure, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So moved. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for Gary. Thanks for bringing this up, and Lynn, thanks for
Thanks,
all
everybody.
the work that you and Wayne are doing to make sure that youth camp goes off successfully this year. So excited to start getting back to normal. And I'm sure I asked Lynn to do a little bit of an update on the youth camp a little bit later in the day. So I think we'll give him a chance to fill us in some of the details a little bit later. So I believe that's all we have for expenditure requests. I do know that I talked to Jeff Hastings a little bit. He was not able to make it today. I think he's going to put in a request in the fall that the state council support some of the work that TU Dare is doing. And I think I will also, the other person that we usually support will be Chris Collier and his work in the Northeast on some of the fish passage issues. And so I think I'll talk to Chris over the summer and see if he wanted a similar, if he could use some funding from the state council as well. So, but I think those requests will probably come in the fall. I think Jeff was talking in the past, like we have supported him at $2,000, and I think he would be asking for something similar. So just to put that on everybody's radar. Moving on, the chair's report. Our executive committee has, we approved a couple of sign-on letters. Just wanted to let everybody know about that. There was a letter to Congress, at the federal level, supporting the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. We approved that via email on March 19th. There was also a letter to Congress that was generated from TU National, kind of started this, and they asked the council to sign on, and it was in support of federal Good Samaritan legislation. And that was approved via email on March 25th. We also, the executive committee, approved an expenditure since our last meeting that was $500 to pitch in to help hire our lobbyist, Brandon Scholes from the Capital Group, to work on trying to get funding for dam removal in the Wisconsin state budget. That's something that he's currently working on. It's kind of a, several chapters came together. It was initiated by a lot of Duke's work and the Captawish chapter's work on their dam removal project on the Connecticut River. And so we actually expect that to come up for a vote in the Joint Finance Committee next Thursday. So we're hoping some of that paid off, but we kind of added to Brandon's workload this spring. So he told us it would be another $5,000 to have him work on that, in addition to the work that he's doing right now on North Nelson stewardship for us. So there were several chapters that came together and put some money in the pot, and then TU National also pitched in $1,000, and all said and done, by the end of it, we were $500 short, and so they came to the state council and asked us to seal the deal, which we did. So, and I can give an update on where Brandon's at and when we talk advocacy a little bit later on. The next item is a Wisconsin TU resolution opposing the Enbridge Line 5 reroute. This is something that, if you remember from our February meeting, the Wild Rivers TU chapter approached us, approached the council, and they shared the resolution that they had put together as a chapter, and they've formally asked the state council to adopt something very similar so that we can show statewide support for their position. So I basically took their resolution and put it on our letterhead. I think I changed maybe one of the sections that had specifically talked about the chapter's area in Wisconsin, and I just kind of left that piece off. But I think all the other pieces, when I read it over and a couple of us looked it over, they seemed relevant to the state. And so that was something that I had sent out as an attachment, and I hope you had all had a chance to take a look at that. Melissa or Kevin from Wild Rivers, are you on? Would you want to take a minute and maybe speak about where things are at with the Line 5 reroute right now? Not sure if
Yeah, I'm on. I can. This is Melissa. Am I on video now? I can't tell. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
And I can see you. You look great.
Oh, hi Heidi. Where we're at with the reroute is basically still waiting for the DNR to complete their draft environmental impact statement. Actually, the DNR has contracted that work out, and so it's still really no clear indication of when that EIS is going to be drafted, when that draft is going to be complete. But once it is, it will go to public comment, and at that point, then the DNR will just take public comments and we'll take it from there. And what I was going to say about that is a local Line 5 coalition that's been working on this issue has been pressing for the DNR to extend the typical public comment period. Public comment period is 30 days. And they've requested from the DNR an extension of that. And I don't think that there's been any decision as to whether or not they're going to extend that public comment period when it does open. So I would say really for people who want to stay in the loop, a good way to do that is if you just Google Enbridge DNR, it will take you directly to, you'll get a link to their page that is devoted to Enbridge permitting issues, and there's like an update there. You can sign up for email updates and stuff on the issue. So that's all I know right now.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. Appreciate you updating us on where it's at. It's definitely something we're going to keep an eye on for sure.
And if I could add, if any of you've been to Copper Falls and have seen the topography and the beauty of the water, but also just the current and all of the tributaries that come into that water, that's the area we're talking about. So it's really at risk. If there were ever something to go wrong with the pipeline, there are a lot of valuable waterways that would be destroyed.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate that. It's always good to put things in perspective and have a familiar place that you can get in your mind when you're talking about these issues. Yeah. And obviously I think the reroute plan is going to cross like 17 trout streams. Like, I mean, there's a lot, you're opening up a lot of risk there for, like you say, if something ever happens in the future, we're putting an awful lot of river systems at risk. So.
Well, and I would also add to that, Mike, just the development of that area with a pipeline, even if there's no damage to the pipe, and there's no leak, that the construction of an additional, I think it's 41 miles of pipeline in that area crossing not only, I think it's more than 17 trout streams and all of the tributaries and the wetlands that, you know, feed those streams. That in itself is a significant impact. So just wanted to put that out there too.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Appreciate that. Anybody else have questions or comments about the resolution that we put together? Would anyone like to make a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved. Fred from CRTU.
Thank you. We have a second.
This is Gary. I'll second it. Gary Horvath.
Thank you, Gary. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call it to a vote. All those in favor of approving the resolution opposing the Enbridge Line 5 reroute, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So moved. Thank you. Next order of business would be the Great Lakes Advocacy Coordinator position. I just wanted to briefly update you on this. I know some of you folks are probably already aware of this, but some of you may not know. Taylor Ritterbush, who had been filling that position, has actually moved on. He accepted a position with the Michigan, it would be the Michigan equivalent of the DNR. I forget what they changed their name. It's like Eagle now, EGLE. But it's the Michigan equivalent of the DNR. He's a policy analyst for them now. It was a great opportunity for him. It was hard to see him go, but you know, I think when he looks at his professional career, it was a pretty easy choice for him to make. You know, it's a good thing for him. And we had good discussions, and I think, you know, at some point in the future, he's probably open to coming back to Wisconsin in some capacity and, you know, working on some level. So I think that would be, great. I know he was one of the finalists in the running for the new Wisconsin Wildlife Federation executive director position, and he just missed out on that. They chose somebody who is also, you know, a perfect fit for their organization, Mark LaBarbera, who I've had a chance to meet with a couple of times, and I think he's going to be great. But I think Taylor would have been great for that position too. But so I just want to let folks know that he is no longer there. Lynn Beck and myself have had a couple of conversations with, well, I guess Lynn has had a couple of conversations with Keith Curley, and we're scheduled to meet next week with Keith to talk about TU National's plan to fill that role and how they see it evolving in the future and what it might look like. So the early indications that Lynn and I received from Keith is that TU does plan to fill the role. They're not just going to close up shop, but I think they'd like to expand maybe the scope of what they're working on to include some advocacy training at the grassroots level for our chapters in the area. So, which is something I think we would very much welcome. I know a lot of times, like, Taylor's funding was really tied specifically to the Great Lakes, and it really like hampered a lot of what he was able to do. So I think we're going to push Keith a little bit on that and see if we could make the scope of that role a little bit larger so that we can get some more support for our chapters. Lynn, do you have anything to add?
No, that's pretty much about it. Keith basically emphasized the fact about the advocacy, and that part really wouldn't change, except for, like you just said, that there'll be a lot more training involved, just basically to work with the chapters. And then from that, he's hoping that that position also will work with chapters on like planning any of their work to be done, and where that would fall in that scope with the parameters of like laws and whatever. And also there's 4 areas, and it could be possibly 5 areas, that they will kind of tie that all in with his position. And again, that is only kind of laid out there right now. It's nothing in stone, and it really depends on, like Mike said, what we talk with him and what we feel Wisconsin TU needs out of that position also. So it's great that they're collaborating with us and it's turning out to be a pretty decent proposition anyways, and happy that they're going to replace that position.
Lynn
Yeah,
or
so-
Mike, I have a question. Was the original commitment to mostly Great Lakes stuff because the position was funded by Great Lakes restoration money?
I don't think it was specifically GLRI money that was paying his salary, but he received funding from a couple of foundations whose main focus was on Great Lakes work, and so that restricted him to primarily working on Great Lakes stuff. The way TU sets up a lot of these positions is that you end up having to go out and kind of write a lot of grants to support your salary. And they, Keith, when the position was set up, Keith went out and helped them secure some funding from a couple of different foundations, but it was specifically tied to Great Lakes work. And that's how he kind of got stuck in that area, just because the funding was there to do that advocacy work. So, and I think he did a great job of, when you look at the NLC work group, the Great Lakes work group, and they put together this document, the case for the Great Lakes. There was a fair amount of work that went into that. And, so you can see the projects that he touched. Taylor was doing good stuff, so he will be missed. Any other questions on that? Okay. If any of you know him personally, I have his personal contact information. If you want to know how to get a hold of him, just let me know and I can put you in touch with him. So if you want to keep up to date with Taylor, I told him he was still welcome to come over and fish in Wisconsin. So next item on the agenda is I wanted to let folks know, many of you probably know this already, but the DNR submitted their study of the Central Sands to the state legislature. This was something that I believe the legislation was passed back in 2017, and it required the DNR to do a groundwater study of the Central Sands to see if they could find a direct correlation between high capacity wells and groundwater pumping and the lake levels in the area. And so I think the key takeaway from the study is that they were able to find that water pumping is directly impacting the surface waters, specifically the 3 lakes that they were tasked with studying. But I kind of wanted to ask, I'd like to ask Tom Lager to step in and maybe just give us a little more insights on how that process played out, if you wouldn't mind, Tom.
Well, this has been rapidly evolving, so I'm also going to write an article for Todd, and it'll be with a higher level of detail with Trout. So I'm going to save most of my comments for the written article. But to build on what Mike has said, the DNR have finally completed their research, and their research is really extraordinary. The professionals that were involved in it and the understanding of groundwater in the central part of the state that resulted from the study is extraordinary. The challenge, though, is leveraging it now. They're talking. The DNR are proposing water management districts, and that sounds good on its face, but they're not proposing enforcement, regulations along with it. It would be largely voluntary, and the concern of in particular the concern of the local group, and again I'm going to try to get the right the right name for the group, the Central Sands Water Action Coalition. And the coordinator there is Raymond Hansen. And they've got real concerns about the legislators actually following through and accepting the DNR recommendations. So on one level, the action group, the action coalition doesn't believe there's enough teeth in what the DNR are recommending, i.e. the absence of regulations that have the force of law. And the legislators can decide to totally ignore the recommendations and the conclusions of the study. So I think this is a great opportunity for those chapters surrounding not only the Central Sands area. This has statewide implications, on who owns and values our groundwater. So what I will do in the article is summarize this, and I will also include sites that you can go to and dig into some of the background information, and then hopefully this will pique your interest and you'll be able to contact legislators to be more responsive. And we're up against the agribusiness in the state. We know it's an important part of our overall economy. It's also important to protect our groundwater. And while this study focused on lakes, it is also reported in the study results, streams are more sensitive than lakes, but streams were not the focus of the legislature's defined study design, study criteria. So when we had asked for $1,000 for gear to measure ground flows on the eastern side of the Central Sands area, Jake Lemon has been working with the DNR, the same people that have written the report that we're talking about. We're trying to work collaboratively with them, but it's the streams on the eastern side, like the Pine, the Wapaka, the McCann, Caves, Taggett. If all of those streams mean anything to you, on the eastern side, they're going to be impacted potentially by excessive groundwater withdrawal. And there are streams on the western side that I'm less familiar with that will also have the same impact. And one of the other conclusions or understandings coming out of the study is that it's no one individual high capacity well that's accountable for it. It's the whole thing. It's the accumulative effect of many straws dragging water out of the ground. And that's why water management districts are being talked about. So anyway, I'll provide some detail in the next issue of Wist Trout, and after that there'll be some more articles, I think, and then I'll have links to other more detailed information. Thank you, Mike.
Hey, Tom, has DNR addressed why they're not recommending any regulation changes?
I think it's in their report, and they'll have their rationale for what they're recommending in the report.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom. We appreciate the insights. And yeah, DNR actually has a pretty nice webpage set up, similar to the Enbridge thing. If you just search Central Sands Study in DNR, the page will pop up. You can see the report. You can learn about the, how they went about collecting the data and putting that together. And I think, it's frustrating to hear that, we spent all this time doing the report and we found that there are impacts, and the legislature is probably not going to do anything about it. But it's also good to know that we've got a pretty good start on understanding how the water system works in the Central Sands now. And that's something that we didn't have 4 years ago. So I think that's something that we need to, that's a positive takeaway that we need to, get from this, that the basic, setting up those computer models, the DNR now has that set up where 4 years ago they didn't. We looked at places like Michigan, and Michigan has done extensive groundwater work. They just plug in the data and they know how their watersheds work, where the water's coming from, where it's going. They understand all that because they've, invested in the systems to set that up and understand how the water works. And we're a little bit behind the curve here in Wisconsin, but it's nice to see that starting to happen. So there are some positives to take away from all of this. So anybody else have questions for Tom or myself, or comments regarding the Central Sand study?
Yeah, this is Melissa. Not a question so much as a comment, and I don't want to be a negative Nelly, but I guess I'm just a little bit, I'm glad that the study has gone through. I just saw a report that it had come out, it was finalized, and having a better, handle on models for how groundwater withdrawal is going to affect streams and lakes is very important. But this has been known since the 90s, this issue of high capacity wells drawing down, especially lakes, but even, when I lived in Stevens Point, when the Little Plover River dried up, that was a first. And so while I welcome this and I'm encouraged by it, I'm not that encouraged by it because I don't think that it's really a science issue. Making the change isn't about, we don't have enough science. And I can guarantee there will be another call for another study that will probably go out in the next couple of years because we'll need to study it more, right? So I guess I don't really know what we as an organization can, what we can do other than just continue to support these efforts. But it's really about changing attitudes in the legislature, I think. And so I'm not sure how much our lobbyists can work on these issues or how much they do. But anyway, again, I don't want to be a negative Nelly, but none of this new information is really new. We just have a better tool to find out more about what we already know, right? So, what can we do?
Yeah, that's a good point. Moving forward, I definitely think there's an opportunity to do a lot more advocacy work within the state legislature. I think, from our organization's perspective, it would be good to identify a couple of targets. If there are specific, statutes or things that we would like to see written into law that we can advocate for, I think that would help. And then certainly once we get through the budget session, we can, talk to our lobbyist and see what he thinks what the possibilities are for going forward. Before this study was even, so it was put out for public comment before the DNR finalized it and submitted it to the legislature. We already had 2 legislators who I heard at public meetings, Senator Teston and Representative Krug, both said that they had no intentions of taking up any of the recommendations in there and putting it into state law or statute or writing a bill. And so that's pretty disheartening when you have folks in their own area, and it's obvious, the agribusiness community they're the main players, and that's who legislators are listening to right now. So we need to certainly do a better job and up our advocacy game in that region. And I think having a defined strategy will help. So I think that's something once we get past the budget season, something folks in the Central Sands and maybe myself and our lobbyist Brandon can sit down and talk about. I think that might be one of the next areas we might want to focus on.
And Mike, this is Kim McCarthy. I've got a question, I think, that relates to all of this. As we've been talking about this release of the Central Sands information, almost immediately we heard that this current legislature is not going to act upon it. And I guess we all know that we have the legislature we have because of gerrymandering. And I'm just curious. Now, I certainly know that our 501c3 status prohibits us from endorsing candidates. But how about taking a position on something like gerrymandering? Are we allowed to do that as a C3 organization?
That's a good question, Kim. I'm not sure I know the answer. I think that would take some research. I'm not sure if Henry's on. He's head of our risk management. That might be a question for Henry. I know he was going to try to connect and follow along. He's at his daughter's basketball tournament this weekend, but probably a question for Henry, I would think, or somebody at TU National to, like, where's the line that we can't go over, right? That's kind of what you're asking.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we would need some clear guidance from TU National on something like that. At least I would feel more comfortable having some guidance from them before we pursued something like that.
Okay. Well, would you mind if I followed up on that?
Not at all. Yeah, go for it. And
Okay.
please let us know what you find out.
I will.
And in the meantime, I can, well, I'll let you do that, and then maybe we'll think about how we'd want to approach our lobbyist and get his input on what we're thinking about doing.
Good.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments on the Central Sands study? All right, we'll move on. I just wanted to put this on here as kind of a reminder. The Five Rivers Club Midwest Rendezvous was scheduled to be at the West Fork, the Kickapoo River, at the sports club there, October 1st through the 3rd. That's the first weekend in October, which coincidentally also happens to be our next state council meeting will be that Saturday morning. And we're planning on holding that in Viroqua. I'm not sure yet if the hospital is going to be open to groups yet or not. That's something that I will look into. Otherwise, we'll be looking at finding an alternate location there in Viroqua. But I do hope to have, us meeting in person in the Viroqua area that weekend. There's been talk, and we bring in, so the plan with these rendezvous, the Five Rivers Club are basically the college chapters of TU chapters. And so we were going to put it out to all the upper Midwest programs. They usually get about 40 or 50 kids that'll come to these things for the weekend. A lot of it is mostly camaraderie and fishing centric, but they do try to work in a couple of like community events or like some stream restoration project that the kids can work on, or like a stream cleanup thing. And so we've kind of pitched the idea of doing a couple of different tracks that day. One would be kind of a community like education event in the city of Viroqua, kind of a come out, bring the kids out, like learn how to fish. And we could get the college kids teaching, the high schoolers or middle schoolers or elementary school kids in the community, like how to cast and, tie knots and things like that for a couple hours in a community park. The other idea was doing some, possibly doing some restoration work or hooking up with TU Dare, and doing some sort of maybe a tree planting thing out there, or some type of in-stream restoration work that kids could participate in as well. So I think either of those tracks will set it up so that it would be like an afternoon event for a couple hours. And we'd probably look to have a couple of volunteers from TU be at each of those events. So maybe just something to keep in mind. The monkey wrench in all of this, which I haven't figured out yet. So Andrew Lafredo was the young person who was working for TU National, who was organizing a lot of these rendezvous. And I haven't been able to get the full scoop yet, but he is, he's no longer employed by TU. And so I need to sit down with Franklin Tate and talk a little bit about this and see how that's going to affect the rendezvous, and whether we just want to make sure that that's still going to go on and that we're going to have organizational support from TU National. So Kim or Lynn, I don't know, have you had any discussions with Franklin? I know you're on the education NLC work group about this.
No, other than, because this is the first I heard of the date, but I have to talk to Franklin the second week of June. I know Tara Granke is going to be, I think, still out on maternity leave. Or she's just coming back. So maybe just the week before. So I don't know. I guess we'll see where all that's going. And Franklin just had a lot on his mind and hadn't really thought about how he was going to attack that yet. So,
Yeah,
you know,
so
I found out ago that Andrew left too. So,
yeah, so I guess this one's a stay tuned on. So we'll get some more information as it gets closer and figure out if we're able to pull this off. But it would be great to have all those kids come to Wisconsin and we can kind of show off a lot of the work that TU is doing in the state and around that area. And it's a great program, and we'd love to have those college kids come back and have a good time in Wisconsin. So we'll see what we can do to make that happen. Yeah, Jim Erickson, you got a question?
Yeah, how many colleges locally are signed up for this program? Because we just signed up UW Stout this spring. So I know that we can get some kids down there from that group. So what other universities in the Midwest are part of this program?
Yeah, I know Stevens Point has a real active program. They're probably one of the more active programs in the area. I'm not sure about the other colleges in Wisconsin. I'm trying to think, the last time they came up to the Rendezvous was 2 years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. They had kids from like Nebraska and Missouri were coming to this. So it was pretty impressive to see. I think there was Carroll University in Southeast Wisconsin has a program. So we get kids from all over. We probably should have an inventory at the state council level of all the local Five Rivers clubs in the state. And I guess that's something that we probably don't have a good handle on yet, and probably something we need to focus on.
What does it cost these kids to come to that rendezvous?
Yeah, so the cost is real minimal. The state council put together $1,000. TU National puts in a fair amount of money, and they do some work with some sponsoring companies. And so the cost to the kids is usually like a minimal, like $10 to $20 for the weekend for camping, and then they're on their own for travel, and but usually a lot of the meals are provided for, and the camping opportunity is there, so it's a pretty good sweet deal for them.
Okay, because we were going to sponsor, help, because it's the first time, and a young man came to us who started a fly casting club, and so the TU person who just quit signed him up, and I told them about this rendezvous, and so our chapter was going to help support these kids to go, and maybe some transportation and stuff like that. So that's all the only reason we were looking for what kind of money it is. So as long as you're going to have it, we're going to try to send some kids over there. Except half of them are playing football, so that's it's going to be a little bit a mess.
Yeah, it's tough to work the schedules there, but we just at least wanted to make the opportunity. These are usually held in the spring, and so it's kind of like an end of school year, like after finals, like mid-May is primarily when we try to hold these. But obviously with COVID, the option was to either push it back to 2022 or try to hold it in the fall. And we thought, let's go ahead and try to get them together in the fall, see what happens.
Okay, well, we're working on UW Eau Claire now also, but they're just left school, so we'll see if we can get them signed up. But let us know who is going to be the person who signs this up, because I just forgot the kid's name who signed them from TU. He didn't. All I did is send an email, and he took care of it. So if Tara is going to do it, we did a Stream Girls with her, so that would be a good a simple relationship for us also. So let us know.
Yep. Yeah. It would probably be Franklin Tate would be the person to contact right now until they find someone to fill Andrew's position. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's all I need.
Okay. Tim Fraley, got something?
Yeah. Our chapter, basically, we pay all of the UW Platteville group that are going, we pay their expenses. I think we allocated like $40 a camper or something to them. And the other thing I just want to say is the UW Platteville chapter is very active in the Mayfly project. And they're kind of taking us along with it.
That's great. Yeah, I forgot the Platteville chapter. I'm glad you mentioned that because there's a pretty active club down there. So that's great to hear. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the Mayfly project, and maybe I'm not the best one to be talking about it either, but I think it's something that it's an opportunity for us to work with. They work with kids in like foster homes, I believe, and kind of helping them through that whole transition process, and by introducing them to like fly fishing and the outdoors. It's really an interesting project that's taken off in recent years. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for TU to volunteer there and to get involved in that. So, anybody else have questions, comments on the Five Rivers Club? All right, we're kind of on schedule. I was hoping to take a break at 10 o'clock. So one more item to cover. And this is really, I'm not asking for any action from the council right now. I just wanted to bring this issue up. It's something that I've been talking to previous council leaders about. We've had some discussions about the length of terms that our officers currently serve. And so currently we're set up, you serve a 2-year term, and then you can serve 2 2-year terms is essentially how it's set up right now. I think in the past, what we had done is leaders typically served 3-year terms, and then when their 3 years was up, they turned it over to somebody else. And I think that changed somewhere along the lines, but I think Lynn Beck was the most recent state council chair who did 4 years, and we've kind of been talking about that, and the consensus has been that 4 years is too long. That 3 years is kind of the sweet spot. So the problem with 4 years is that if you have somebody who commits to being vice chair and then waiting in line, kind of learning on the job, and then they commit to being state council chair, that's an 8-year commitment from somebody. And it really makes, recruiting future leaders, that's a huge commitment to ask from someone. And it really makes it difficult to recruit future leaders. And so we think by scaling it back and going back to this 3-year term, I think we'll be in a better situation to recruit leaders to the state council. And 3 years is kind of a sweet spot, just as a leader. And those of you who are chapter leaders, a lot of those are 2-year terms. I almost feel like 2 years is not quite enough. At least when the state council, it probably is for the chapter, it probably works well. But from the state council's perspective, I think 2 years would almost be too short, because you feel like the first year you're kind of learning everything and getting familiar with things. The second year, you feel pretty good and you understand how things work, and you're starting to push initiatives. And then, we talked about with, Kim and I have had long conversations about this. Year 3 is really where you can crank up the heat and get a lot of stuff done. But I think once you get towards the end of year 3, and Lynn, you can probably talk about this too, you start to feel some burnout, and so I guess that's what I worry about in future years, and talking about succession for leadership here with the state council. And so I think at some point, maybe in October, I'd like to approach the council and maybe make a change to our bylaws to go back to just a 3-year term. So I just wanted to throw that out there. If you folks have thoughts about that, if you have ideas, you want to talk about it, I'm more than happy to do that. I want to hear what you think about that. When I think about my term, You know, I know Scott Allen is waiting in the wings, and I think Scott is probably at a point where he'd be ready to take over in February. And I think if Scott's ready to do that, like I wouldn't have a problem stepping down and letting him start serving as state council chair. I would have 3 years in. I feel pretty good about what I've been able to accomplish on the state council. I think we're in a good spot to continue to move forward. And I have no plans to step away from the council. I'd like to get more active in advocacy and really focus on our state council efforts at the state capitol. And I think if I didn't have the state council chair work to do, I would be a better advocacy chair than when we have, you know, the situation that we have right now. And so that's kind of my thoughts on it. I just wanted to throw that out there to you all and see what you think about that. Jim, you got a question, comment?
Yeah, 4 years ago, I presented to the board about our presidents. We've had them run, you know, 3, 4, 5 years, and then when the transition was horrible, so we took it down to the president ran for 2 years, but he was on the board for the 3rd year to be a mentor for his vice president who became president. So the transition of that yearly transition where you kind of know what you want to do in that 2nd year, and in the 3rd year, you can continue to clean it up and work with your president. So that's what we did. And it's helped our transition because we found that I'm the president now, and in 2 years, I'm getting, I'll be up in October. You get kind of burnt out after you've been on the board for a while. And I have a yearly, I have a plan for our fundraising because of COVID last year. So that's going to be my project for the year. And Bill Huff will be taking over in October. And then we're working on a vice president. And that's how his plans are going to work. So just a thought.
Yep, and we kind of have that built into the state council on our executive committee. The immediate past state council chair is automatically a member of the executive committee. And so that past state council chair is there when all of those decisions are made and the discussions are had and can bring that kind of the history of where the council has been to the discussions and to the table. So that's something that, you know, in the future, I plan to continue to serve in that role as well. So,
well, that's the reason where you don't want all the knowledge has already been built up by an officer, and then he gets burnt out, you know, and goes away. So we found that because of the age of most of our presidents were retired, the 2 years was long enough. So
yeah,
that's why we did it. So anyway.
All right, Tim, I'm going to let Tim's got his hand up. Tim, you're the only one between us and a coffee/bathroom break. So go ahead.
I just want to say that in our charter for the North chapter and our bylaws is the president serves a 2-year term as past president. We have a past president position. And that's it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so that kind of, like Jim was saying, that kind of keeps you around as a mentor to the next generation. So that's good to have that continuity on those board discussions. So anyway, I just wanted to plant the seed. Like I said, if you got comments, let me know. I'd be happy to talk with any of you all more on how you think we should best structure the council for success in the future. So with that, I'm going to say let's take at least a 5-minute break. We'll come back at, I guess that would be 10:11. If you guys want to stay on and have some discussions, I will stop sharing my screen. But I'm going to pause the recording as well, and then on. Next person I have on the agenda is Lynn Beck, our National Leadership Council representative, with his NLC report. So Lynn, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mike, and I'll try and keep it short so we can kind of get back on schedule. We just had our last NLC meeting in about the middle of May, and with it, the Vol Ops team had some stuff reported out there that I think was very important. Jeff Yates reported on the financial reports. I guess it doesn't mean much now, but it was reduced by 30 questions that made it a lot simpler. But they also had an issue that should have been corrected right away because they did not hear anymore. And so they did not have us contact anybody on it. So I guess I'm assuming that all of our chapters got their reports in because we did not have any emails on missing reports. So that part is good. Beverly Smith reported on the diversity, equity, and inclusion part of the strategic plan, and reported that it's going to play an important role in the upcoming strategic plan, mainly because the strategic plan is going to be focusing on membership and things to coincide with membership, on getting chapters the availability and ability to add people to their chapters, and also wanted to emphasize the importance of the chapters and councils to educate on the platform of DE&I. So it's kind of an advanced warning because there'll be a lot more coming out on that. And the other thing that she touched base on was the recharter of chapters. This will be due in September of 2021. It's a process that occurs every 4 years. Mike, this will be your first time through it. It's just basically you evaluate the chapters, make sure that they're financially sound and have leaderships in all their positions, and are, you know, staying current with the reporting and everything. Pretty easy to get rechartered. They may change the process a little bit, but there'll be further details that are going to be distributed out to the councils prior to the process. So I imagine, Mike, you'll be finding out stuff probably middle of July and everything. And the last thing that was touched on from the vol ops side was the strategic plan is almost complete. It basically is complete, but there's some fine tuning and some definitions that they felt needed to be added into it. So hopefully we'll be hearing more on that in probably the next month, and they're ready to roll that out. On the NLC side, Rich Thomas, who's the NLC secretary, wanted everybody and reported to everybody that the importance of the community forums and the role that they can play within your chapters and everything. So they want to make sure that as chapter leaders, you guys are taking a chance. I don't know if all of you are on the community forum, but there's a place you can go into on the national site and join into that. There's a lot of good information being disseminated out. I know I've seen a lot of your names on some of the comments and everything in there on the forum. So everybody just keep up the good work. And if you haven't been on it, check it out, because it might be something that might help you as a chapter leader. And then the other part was work group reports. There's all the different work groups that NLC has on there. There's conservation and also the education and all of that. They're split into two groups. Kelly Bukta, who heads up the DE&I work group, is finalizing a presentation that hopefully will help out with what Beverly Smith was talking about to help assist in exploring personnel and group level DE&I initiatives. So basically help you get your chapter going with a DE&I if you do not have it, and maybe hopefully explain some of the finer points of it. They're looking for this to be completed by July 21st or July 2021. And, but they haven't figured out how they're going to roll it out. So it may be a Zoom meeting, and maybe, just, by email or whatever, but they're trying to figure out the best way to reach everybody and to answer any questions about it. And all the work groups are looking for new participants. A misconception that's out there is to join an NLC work group, you actually have to be an NLC rep. this is really totally untrue. You can be a chapter leader, chapter member. If you find a work group that you're interested in and maybe want to see and get that involved with your chapter, check them out and join up. So I guess send me an email if you find anybody or know anybody in your chapter that would like to get into say like the youth education. You know, we only have about 9 or 10 active members, and we'd like to see that about 20 because really these work groups are put together for the chapters and councils. And so without chapter and council input, it's kind of hard to, pick out new options or new things that have to be done. And you get tired of regurgitating the same message all the way through. So some new input would be wonderful from everybody. And I know the rest of the work groups would really appreciate the input too. And if you know of anybody that would like to get into the education, excuse me, we meet the first Wednesday of each month, and I can get you the information. We meet by Zoom, and it's not like every month we're doing a full meeting, because we try and do presentations on the different youth programs every other month or so. So it's a lot of fun and a lot of planning going on in that. So join in. And other than that, other than the most important thing with the strategic plan, watch for that to come out and get ready to apply it to your chapters. And Mike, I know you've been in on some of the conversations, and it'll go forward with the council. So other than that, any questions, let me know. Otherwise, that's it, Mike.
Thanks, Lynn. Any questions for Lynn about the NLC workings? All right, sounds good. Thanks for the time.
Actually, I do have a question.
Oh,
sorry. It always takes me a minute to unmute myself. So this is unrelated to the education work, but I'm just wondering, with Taylor's position being vacant, what's going to happen with the Great Lakes Working Group and like the folks in different chapters across the area, across the region that have been, meeting through his leadership? Will that just kind of like go away, or is there a way?
No, not at all. Okay. Right now there is Chris Steffen, who I believe is from Ohio, is going to kind of step into it and kind of get it going, or keep it going, I should say. Okay. And so it is going. If you have not received an email, Chris just sent one out to the work group, and the next meeting is, let me just check that real quick, but I believe it's the 22nd
of June.
Of June, yeah.
Okay.
At 7:45 Eastern time, so 6:45 our time.
Yeah.
And I can send you the link and everything.
Yeah, that would be good, because Taylor was sending me links, or sending, like keeping me updated, but I don't know if I was on the chapter list.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I think all Chris got was the individual ones that Taylor was, and if he was sending it to you separately because you weren't part of the work group.
Yeah.
And
then I joined on a couple of meetings, and so I don't know why. But in any case, yeah, I would like to maintain contact with that group. So.
Sure. And all you have to do is request to be part of the work group, and they'll put you on, just like, excuse me, like I was talking about with all the other work groups. But I will forward all this on to you, what I have, the 2 emails that he just sent out, and then you can contact Chris and get it on your schedule and go from there.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, everyone. I think we'll move on to, I've got Kim McCarthy up next to talk about our Friends of Wisconsin TU program, as well as the Watershed Access Fund. So Kim, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Good morning, everybody. I'll give you a little update on Watershed, then Friends. And at the end of those updates, there's going to be a change needed in the Friends program. We'll talk about that after we've updated some facts and figures. So starting with Watershed, right now in that account, we've got a balance of almost $39,000. Since the first of the year, we've received donations into that account of almost $8,000, which is a little misleading because 5,000 of that came in one check from one individual that really likes the fact that we're working on access. Now, we also were hoping to be able to report another acquisition today, but as I tell people, never get your hopes up too high on land acquisitions until the the papers are actually signed. We had been working on a property on the north branch of Beaver Creek up in Marinette County. We thought it was in the bag. The landowner had signed the agreement to purchase. Our contribution was approved by our board. The DNR folks had approved it on their end, so the cash was ready to go. And at the absolute very last minute, some landowners up there decided to challenge the validity of the easement, and they have actually filed a suit to disallow the easement that the landowner thought that was done in good faith and was actually handled by attorneys. So at this point in time, DNR cannot go ahead and finalize a purchase on which there's a legal action pending. So we're going to have to sit and wait now for this thing to wind through the legal process. We hope it's still going to close, but there's no longer even a good guess on the time frame. So our money has been appropriated, and we're just waiting to see now what happens with the legal action. Any questions about Watershed? Okay, let's get into Friends. The balance in the Friends account right now is almost $23,000. And Gary, you're still on. Have all the grants that we approved this year now been paid out by you? Have all the 12 chapters contacted you?
I don't think they all have. I misplaced my list of grants, and been looking for it and I can't find it. It seems to me, go on with your report. I'll see how many checks I wrote so far. Okay. So we could be, depending on what Gary comes up with as far as who has claimed their grant and who hasn't, that number of 23,000 could be down closer to 19 or 20, depending on if we still have grants out there. Donations into the Friends Fund to this point since January 1st have been about $5,500 this year. Now, when all is said and done in the program this year, we will have paid out $23,400, and at this point, donations have been about $5,500. So you can clearly see that we're paying out more than we're taking in at this point in time, which is going to lead to the situation that I want to talk about in just a moment. We were just lucky that we had a big surplus in that account, and we were able to handle that overpayment, let's say this year, but we can't continue to do that forever. We're just not going to have the funds. So the first change in the program that I want to look at are the 2 application dates that are currently in effect. Right now, chapters can either submit a Friends request by January 15th or by April 15th, and we will consider requests that come in by those 2 deadlines. The problem we're going to have in the not too distant future is the chapters that wait until the April 15th deadline are going to run the very real risk that all the money is gone and has been awarded at the January 15th deadline. And that's going to kind of make that April 15th deadline a moot point. I mean, there's just not going to be any reason to have it. So the suggestion that I'm making is that we may no longer be able to honor a second deadline. We probably are going to have to get into a situation where all of the applications are due by one date, and then they'll all get a fair look by the regional vice chairs and the state council vice chair.
Nobody will be rejected simply because money wasn't available. If anybody is rejected, it'll be because the grant request wasn't up to par. So what we really need to do today is to vote to change the language in the Friends program and go to one deadline date. Now, we could keep the January 15th deadline. If chapters want a bit of additional time because they think they can't do a proper grant by that January 15th timeframe, we could certainly consider looking at a date like February 15th or March 15th. The date is not as important there as making sure that everybody gets a fair look at the grant. And in order to do that, we've got to go to the one deadline. We probably shouldn't go much beyond March 15th or possibly April 15th because of the fact that those of the chapters that deal with DNR and some of the agencies are going to have to know by about that time whether they've gotten the grants or not. So I guess the motion we should entertain today should be in two parts. The first part would simply say that we're going to change from one deadline or from two deadlines to one. And then the second part would list the date by which grants have to be submitted, January 15th, or do we want to change to February 15th? So Mike, at this point, I will turn it back to you to lead the discussion and then look for a motion to do what we need to do with that Friends situation.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate you putting in the work to track all the requests and the incoming donations and all of that. I know it's a fair amount of legwork on your end, so appreciate all the work that you're doing to keep those accounts, keep those records accurate. So, that being said, I guess we'll open it up to discussion. You all chapter leaders, the Friends program is really here to support the chapters. We as a council go out and we have the opportunity to raise these funds, and the idea is to turn around and put it right back into your hands so that you can do on the ground restoration work. And this is kind of meant to be the seed money. So when you're talking about setting up projects, do you feel like you can all meet a January 15th grant deadline? Would you want to push it back a little bit? We're, like Kim said, we're open to suggestions, but I think we would like to do it earlier in the spring so that it's finalized and you guys have the money in your bank account so that you can do what you need to do with other partners and to get the project rolling. So anybody have thoughts on that?
This is Gary. I had got a couple different thoughts. Number one, moving it back makes sense, but I don't know if I'd want to go past February 15th because chapters want to know if they can get that grant or not. They've done all the preliminary work, and they need to know if they're not going to have the grant so that they can make other arrangements if that's what they need to do. So my suggestion is February 15th, and after that, they can apply if there's money left. If people want to give it to them, that's fine. But one February 15th deadline.
Okay. Yeah, I think, you bring up a good point, Gary. And also with our fiscal year changing to the end of March, March 15th, we have requests coming in that could kind of muddy the waters as far as, when the money's coming in and when it's going out. It might be better to give a little more clearance time between that March 31st end of fiscal year time. So I think sticking with January 15th or moving it to February 15th would be good. The downside of February 15th would be when we all meet in person. If we had a January 15th deadline, the regional vice presidents could have made a decision before our annual meeting. And when you see Gary in person at that meeting, you could physically pick up your check. If we did a March 15th, if we did a February 15th deadline, Gary would be mailing out all of those checks. So that's the only logistical thing I could see being an issue. But as far as I know, the snail mail still works. So Graham, did you have a question, comment?
No, I was just playing with my screen.
Nice.
Yeah, my question was related to the time frame or the turnaround time for approving requests, because that needs to kind of factor in too. Like, you can have a deadline, but then when will people be notified, and then when will the checks be cut? Because it you know, you kind of have to work backwards from when you want to have the money in hand. And I would think you'd want to have the money in hand, you know, soon enough to make those plans with the DNR or whatever chapters that you're gonna, or whatever organizations that you might be, you know, partnering with. So I'm not sure. It seems like the earlier the better, and you know, getting it in. Yeah, the earlier the better.
That's a good point. And let me explain what we do as far as processing grants. So let's use that January 15th deadline as an example. All of the grants come to me prior to January 15th. Shortly after the deadline, I take those grants and I send copies of all of them to the regional vice chairs and the state council vice chair. And then we establish a deadline for them to read through all the grants and decide if the grant is worthy of being awarded or if there's a problem with it. If there's a problem with the grant, then of course we will schedule a Zoom meeting to find out if we can work with that grant or reject it. And then after that, we know which grants are going to be awarded funding and which ones aren't. And then I go ahead and send emails to the chapters, letting them know whether their grants have been rejected or accepted. So from the time that a grant is due until the time that a decision is actually made and the chapters are notified, plus a little time for them to notify Gary to cut the check and get it to them, we're probably talking at least a month past the due date. So realistically, if we have a January 15th deadline, it's likely that the chapters are not actually going to see money until right around February 15th. So add a month.
Hey, Mike, it's Jim. I'd like to suggest we keep the January 15th date. I think it does a couple of things. It syncs up well with SCWTU, for example. We really start ramping up our habitat work right after the first of the year. So knowing what's in the bag and what's still outstanding is very important. I think it also emphasizes the chapters being proactive. They've got a true need. They should be driving to a January 15th date. And it makes it cleaner. And the last point is, I think it syncs up well with the February council meeting.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Appreciate your insights. And obviously somebody who, you know, you've sat down over the last few years as a regional VP and you've had the opportunity to go through these grants and see the process firsthand. So appreciate your insights. Yeah, if nobody has an issue with the January 15th date, I would say, why don't we go ahead and just keep it at that? And then I think the motion we would entertain would be to just eliminate the second April 15th deadline. And so we would just have one deadline, and that would be January 15th for Friends grant requests.
I just have one more comment about that. I'm just wondering if the January 15th date is almost too late, you know, because when people are making plans to do work together, I mean, if there's something scheduled for spring of 2022 or early summer of 2022, is it early enough to know that you're going to have the money to put toward the project in February or March before that summer? Yeah, and I'm asking that just because I don't know, you know, I haven't been that involved in the funding and development of these, you know, partnerships and projects, but I just know from other experience that sometimes you need to have that commitment of cash like well before, you know, 2 months before the project is going to be starting.
That's a good point. Has anybody, I'll throw it out to the chapter leaders, has anybody experienced an issue where are you not getting the money in time, or has that not been an issue? I haven't heard anything negative in that regards from chapter leaders, but if
I've not experienced that issue.
Mike, Dale Lang here, Northeast. I like the January 15th. I wouldn't go any earlier because we have our regional meeting on the first Saturday of December. And I tell you what, with Christmas and the holidays and everything, to get that to that date, we've got to pretty much keep hopping on that so we can get that in to the Friends. So I wouldn't go any earlier just because of that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think January 15 is a good date. It's worked well for us in the past.
Okay.
Yeah, my experience last season was our chapter submitted a Friends grant, and it was around the holidays that I reached out to the DNR contact to get some more details to include in the grant application. And he was on a 2-week leave over the holidays. So it really would be difficult to get those details from people we need to get them from during the holiday time. So the 15th would work out perfect.
Appreciate the feedback, everybody. Would anyone like to make the motion to eliminate the second round of Friends Grant applications, which is the April 15th deadline?
So move.
Thank you, Tim. Anybody like to second that?
I'll second
it. Dale Lang.
Thanks, Dale. Or Kevin, however you want to do that, Bob. I think they were both in on it. So any further discussion on this? Hearing none, we'll call to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right, so moved. I will go ahead and I'll work with Kim to update the language in our Friends program outline. I think that's posted on our website, so we'll go ahead and try to make that change as soon as we can. So.
Okay, sounds good, Mike, and I'll change that language, send it to you for approval, and we'll go from there. And then I just have one final thing that I wanted to squeeze in here today. Those of you that look over the published list of donors for Friends and Watershed in the newspaper have probably noticed that those lists have gotten to be very, very long. And they're about to become much shorter following the publication of the summer edition of the newspaper. When I took over Friends and Watershed about 1.5 years ago, I was not able to get a list of exactly which donor had donated on which date. And I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. So I just left all the names in place and added new donors as they came in. Now, the agreement we've had with people that are generous enough to donate to those funds is that we'll run their name in the newspaper for at least 4 issues. And again, not wanting to make any mistakes, just wanting to be very careful and not having a list to work off of. I just decided to leave everyone on until at least this next edition, which will be coming out in a few weeks. Now, following that, I'll know for sure who's been on there for 1 year and who has not donated within the last year. And then I can go ahead and edit those lists. And it's not going to be that there's a problem with the program. When you notice those lists have shrunk, it just means that I've edited the list and brought it up to date. So hopefully I'm answering this question before anybody needs to ask it in a few weeks. Okay, Mike, that's all I've got.
Thanks, Kim. Appreciate it.
Hey, Mike, it's Jim. Could I add something, please?
Yes.
The concern I have is we're spending a lot faster than funds are coming in, and that could force us into a position where we'll have to make some tough decisions in the future. And so I think it's just worthy to talk to all the chapters, give them a heads up that it may not be an automatic approval in the future. And I think we as a group are going to have to decide what are the priorities and the criteria that we're going to use if money becomes tight.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Kim, we should make a note when we meet in October to reiterate those issues and those challenges to the chapters so that everybody understands. I think we'll have a better, I feel like we're okay fiscally. I think we're going to make a push in the October issue for Friends specifically. We'll probably send out another donation envelope for that program and hopefully be able to refill the coffers. And so we're not in a situation where we have to turn down good chapter requests. But like you say, you bring up a good point, Jim. At some point we may come to a point where we need to evaluate criteria and figure out which request is is more important than other ones. So, and how we want to do that.
Yeah, and Mike, I would suggest that if people haven't done so for a while, if you get a hold of the Friends language, we do actually have at the end of that language, we actually do have some criteria in place. And this is probably a good time for chapters to go back and actually look at those criteria.
I can maybe send out, like, once we update the language, maybe when I send out the meeting minutes, I can send out the updated Friends language so everybody has it.
Yeah, because a few years ago, we anticipated that this could happen as we watch this program get more and more popular. So, well, it's probably 6 or 8 years ago that we did draft those criteria.
Right. Thanks for bringing that up, Jim. Appreciate it. Moving on, I think Chris Collier's up next with a Great Lakes stream restoration update. Chris, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. Little less formal this time around than past times. I spent the past 3 weeks up in Bayfield County on a restoration project. So just kind of want to get you some highlights as we've kicked off field season and gotten quickly busy up here. First off, we've got 3 interns this year. TU National, we have our 2 that the council and chapters have helped support, where we have part-time interns working a few days a week, helping to inventory road stream crossings, do fishery surveys, and a whole bunch of other work with our partners in the region. And they just started about 2 weeks ago. And then TU National also has a full-time internship that's available across the country, awarded to one person, and the person who got it this year is from the Milwaukee area, and he wanted to work with our Wisconsin team. So he just started this past week. There'll be a more formal introduction to these 3 interns through the article I'm writing for Todd. So you'll get some more information on them here pretty soon. Then in exciting news, TU National approved us hiring a project coordinator to work with me. So we hired Danielle Nelson. She's originally from Green Bay and moved back from the Chicago area, looking to get back to home and work on our stream projects up here. So she just started 2 weeks ago. Is quickly getting her feet under her through the chaotic start of the field season. So we're excited to have her on board. And my plan is to have her, if we can have that in-person meeting in October in Viroqua, come down and meet you all, and you can all meet her. So there'll be more updates on all that coming, and you'll get to meet them at meetings and such as I have them around. Just want to let you know there's been some awesome, exciting staff movement that we're building up our capacity in the Northern Great Lakes watersheds. And then I'm just going to share my screen real quick to show you all what the kickoff to this field season started with. So this is the Marengo River. If you all can see my screen in Northwest Wisconsin, this stretch of the river is actually just over the county line into Bayfield County on the northern end of the Chequamegon-Nicolet National Forest. And this picture here is a pre-construction of a restoration project where you can see those kind of sheer banks. And after the 16 and 18 floods, the banks got scoured really hard by those historic, greater than 500-year flood level events, really ripping off vegetation and destabilizing them, silting in the streams and filling in our pool structure. So we've been working with the Forest Service to design a restoration effort to mitigate this siltation, hold the banks in place, and recreate habitat. So we just went in these past 3 weeks and have been chewing away at 2 different sites where we've been doing this. Let me get and this is just another view of those banks. We got in there with a local contractor, sloped back the banks so they weren't as steep and sheer. We didn't do a reference grade that the rest of the river had. This stretch would have had, just 6-7 years ago. And then we took trees harvested on the site and buried them in the bank to create structures that look like this. And these provide multiple different benefits. The first being they tie into the bank and help hold it in place while we wait for trees to revegetate. They also then keep water from directly hitting the bank. So it keeps that force off, just further giving time for vegetation to come back. And then finally, they create a ton of aquatic habitat beneath them. So really big benefit for the brook trout in this system on the other aquatic species. Beyond just building these structures, we got in there and actually dug out some pools. This is our stream restoration specialist, Chad Kotke. Out on the site, we went from having probably shin to knee deep depth variation to getting holes, and this one's probably in excess of 6 feet. That's about as deep as he could get it, get in there without going under. So pretty cool to have some structure back in there, and we've tied these into these to these wood structures so we can have pools that have cover and also have nice depth to them again. I just wanted to show again reference of what it looked like pre-construction, and then this is another photo of the site post-construction. So you can see the banks a lot less sheer. We've got armoring running across it. This is about 250 feet of wood structures we built. And after we returned the river to the stretch. And then this is just an above view where you can see across the other bank. We restored the floodplain area and added wood to it so that when flood flows come up, we've got more stability with those cobble, gravel, and boulder pieces in there, but then also wood to just help deflect flows and not just create this shear stress that could wash away these floodplain bars. And that's kind of my very quick overview of what the craziness of what's going on. There'll be more details on all this coming in the Trout article, and as always, available for questions now, but just emails and anything between meetings to reach out and learn more about what we're doing.
Sounds great. Thanks, Chris. Anybody have questions for Chris?
I see Melissa has one on the chat. And the cool thing with this is we did not use any cables or rebar or any stakes. Bob Gubernick is a Washington, D.C. office level employee for the Forest Service, but he's based out of Duluth. I mean, he's part of a team that leads all these big stream restoration projects on Forest Service properties. And he designed this one. And his big thing is using the trees to anchor themselves. So we trench those trees into the bank. I'll share again here real quick. Let's find that photo. But we trenched them in so that we could use the root fans on these trees. I mean, these whole trees, so they could actually tie into the bank. And that way we didn't need to use cables and anchors and anything else to hold it in place. This way too, in the event when floods come through, if they do start moving some trees around, making them float, we're going to lose a tree or two at a time. Whereas the big risk with those cable locked in structures is you can lose an entire structure. And then that goes downstream and hits a bridge and blows the bridge out. This will be, a tree, two at a time, just natural loss. And then the structure is built to just catch trees coming from upstream. So avoided using anything like anchors and stuff like that.
Chris, was that project on Forest Service land or somewhere else?
A Forest Service land, yep.
Chris, were there other projects that you guys are doing this summer too?
Oh yeah, we've got a full workload. This one, funding was expiring in June, so we needed to get done. So this kind of kicked off our, construction can start on May 15th. We hit the water on May 17th. So this one was the first one of a series. We're going to have several road stream crossing projects, probably later July and August. And then we're helping some county road commissions assess some flood risks they've been having and looking at funding opportunities and design opportunities as well.
Thanks.
Sounds great. Anything else for Chris right now?
Just want to say thanks for your work, Chris. That's awesome.
Yeah, and this is open to any member, obviously, but Kevin and Melissa with Wild Rivers, especially the support you've given us. I want to get you guys out there once we give the site a little time to settle out. It's going to be pretty cool to see. So maybe we'll plan something for this fall or the upcoming year to get some chapter members out there if they're interested.
Excellent.
Very cool. Jeff Hastings is not with us today. I can fill in for him and give a brief TU Dare update. 2020 was an incredibly successful year despite COVID. I think they worked on 64 different projects and completed, I think it was over 20 miles of stream restoration. So I think they set a new record last year in the Driftless area for restoration work done, at least for miles completed, which is pretty cool. For those of you that work in the area or maybe know some of the Minnesota folks, TU Dare's made a new hire, Dusty Hoffman. I think he came over from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but he's working primarily as a project manager on the Minnesota side of things. So Minnesota has a system set up where they have like a sales tax. A small portion of that goes towards conservation projects. And so there's been a pool of money there that is available to tap into, and they've brought Dusty in to help facilitate some of the projects and the restoration work on the Minnesota side. I think to date they've done over 40 miles of restoration in southeast Minnesota in the Driftless area. So if you haven't had a chance to head over across the Mississippi, it might be worth checking out. So last year they didn't do the bus tour. But I guess it's coming back this fall, so they're going to start planning to do a bus tour in the fall. You can contact Jeff with, as it gets closer, he'll have some more information on that for us, I'm sure. They're also rolling out the water quality app, the WISE H2O. Kent Johnson from the Advocacy chapter has been leading that effort. I think it rolled out, they've done some pilot projects in like 2019 and I think it was set to roll out last year and then COVID hit and it kind of had to scale back things, but it's moving forward this year. So if you have interest in that, I think he's written a couple of articles for Trout that have been pretty interesting, but Kent Johnson would be the contact person if you're interested in that. Then the other thing I wanted to mention is that the TU Dare is the Steel Chainsaw Corporation. They reached out to TU Dare. They've seen some of the photos, some of the work some folks are doing around the area, and they keep seeing their chainsaws, next to our volunteers doing all this work, and they thought it'd be a great opportunity that they could kind of give back. And so Steel has offered, they're going to do 4 grants. They're each worth $1,500, and they're going to go to a different chapter each year. It's basically like a gift certificate for any, like, you could go to a Steel distributor and you basically got $1,500 to spend on Steel equipment. So the first grant went to the Advocacy chapter. I think Randy Arnold and the folks up there have put the money to good use, and they've got some nice new chainsaws to use on their habitat restoration work. So I think there should be, I'm not sure how Jeff's planning on selecting the next 3 chapters to receive those funds, but it's a pretty cool partnership, I think, and something we're looking forward to working with that company in the next few years as well. So it's cool to see them step up and do that. So I think that's all I had right now for TU Dare stuff. I don't know if anybody has other questions or comments on that. But hearing none, I think we'll try to keep rolling. We got about 5 minutes before our next break. I'll try to run through the advocacy stuff real quick and let you know where we're at. Unfortunately, the main issue we've been tracking lately is the Knowles Nelson Stewardship Program. We want to see that reauthorized. Where it's at right now, the Assembly, I think, is ready to do a 10-year, $35 million reauthorization. The word that we're getting out of the Senate is that they're at 3 years, $22 million. And so sometime in the next week, those two sides are going to have to reconcile those numbers. And I think they're going to land probably, somewhere in the middle is my best guess as to what we're going to get. That vote is scheduled in the Joint Finance Committee on next Thursday. So I would say if you have time Monday, maybe Tuesday, if you have any connection to a Republican legislator, that would be the time to call and make the ask and let them know that we're very supportive of a long-term reauthorization. So we'd like to see as many years as we can get. We think the current funding levels and maybe a modest increase would be appropriate. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. The number I've heard thrown around as kind of the middle point is maybe 28 million. So it wouldn't surprise me if that's the number that we land on. But we're trying to get as many years as we can. We'd like to see it closer to 8 years. I think we'd be pretty happy with, like, realistically, if we can get 6 years, I think we're feeling like we did okay. So that's just kind of where things are at right now. I wish I had better news after the governor came out in his budget and pushed a 10-year reauthorization at $70 million. I think a lot of folks got pretty excited about that, but reality set in pretty quick, and we are where we are. So expect an update in Trout on that. The next item I wanted to touch on is, so we talked a little bit about how we hired Brandon to work on getting some increased money in the budget for some dam removal projects on Class 1 trout streams, specifically for the dam removal project on the Kinnickinnic River. What we were told from legislators is that they weren't doing earmarks, at least not very many of them, and that if we tried to put this in the budget as an earmark, it wasn't going to go anywhere. And so we got a little creative with the DNR has a dam safety grant program where you can apply for grants for a dam removal project up to $400,000. And the idea that we pitched to them is that we'd like to see the cap on those grants increase to $2 million for for dam removal projects on a class 1 trout stream. So, which we don't think there's very many of those projects happening right now. I think maybe there's another one in the Central Sands that they might be looking at. I don't know if that would happen at this next round of grant applications or if you guys are looking at a later date. But the primary push on this one is to get that dam out on the Kinnickinnick. And we think we've got a good shot of getting that in, but you know, like I said, that's going to come up for a vote in next Thursday as well. So we'll see where we're at. You know, in a week, I'll have a lot more information for you on that. So,
Mike, as far as the dam in the Central Sands area, I think the application will be mid-summer of this summer.
Yeah. So, and I don't know how much money you're looking at. Like I said, right now that program's capped at 400,000. It's generally overprescribed, so they get more applications than they have money to do.
That's true.
Part of this was the governor in his budget offered to put in $2 million extra into that program. And that's the other thing that we're pushing with the Joint Finance Committee is to take up the governor's recommendation of that additional $2 million. They've been pretty reluctant to take the governor's position on anything, quite frankly. Like the legislature and the administration are not on good working terms right now. And you know, such as divided government life is. And so that's kind of where that is, but we'll certainly follow up and let you know what happens in the next week. Other budget items I wanted to put out there, their Joint Finance has yet to vote on county conservation staff funding. That's something that a lot of the conservation groups have been pushing for. Those of you who do work with your county conservation staff, you know how valuable they are on the ground to do in trout stream habitat. So something we've been pushing the JFC in recent years is to increase funding for those positions. We'll see where that's at. We got some good news this week. Our friends at Ducks Unlimited and the Wisconsin Waterfowl Association have been pushing for a waterfowl stamp increase of $5. That was included in a Joint Finance Committee motion that was approved by their committee on Wednesday. So very good news there. Obviously, it still needs to go to the governor's office and get approval through that process. But we're really happy to see the Joint Finance Committee approve a waterfowl stamp increase. And it kind of, Ducks Unlimited has kind of laid the groundwork and showed us how to go about possibly doing a trout stamp increase. And so we've been talking with them and having some conversations about how they went about doing this and their approach. And they've been pretty good about sharing information with us and ideas and tactics. And I think once we get through the budget session, that's probably going to be our next main advocacy focus, is looking at a trout stamp fee increase so that we can continue to do the restoration work that needs to happen. So anybody have any questions about that stuff real quick before we take our next break? All right, great. So like I said, I'll keep you updated. Expect a full review in the next WIS Trout of all the ongoings. And like I said, if you have connections to state senators or even folks in the state assembly, the assembly is pretty solid on pushing for a 10-year reauthorization. I was at an event with Ducks Unlimited yesterday, and the assembly co-chair for Joint Finance, Mark Bourne, he came flat out and said they're ready to do a 10-year, $35 million reauthorization. And there were several senators there that took note of that statement. So he sent the first shot across the bow, and we're very thankful for that. And we'll see what the Senate does with it. So with that, I will stop talking and take a breath. I'm going to ask Scott for you to hold off till we come back from the break to do a fundraising thing, if that's okay. Can you wait another 5 minutes, Scott?
Yeah, I'll make it quick because I have to duck out pretty quick here. But
all right, we'll get you off shortly. So let's take a 5-minute break. We'll come back at 11:08. I'm going to pause the recording. If you want to say, I'm going to go ahead and start the recording again. And I'm going to turn it over to Scott Allen to give us an update on Banquet and fundraising efforts.
Well, we wrapped up our first annual online auction in April. Thanks to many of the chapters for their donations, which made it a success, as well as Southern, Southeastern, and Antigo chapters, which gave monetary donations. That helped a lot. I was aiming for $7,000 and we hit that, no problem, when you figure in the monetary donations. For an auction with 20 items, that was pretty good. I limited it to, well, actually 21, since we have 21 chapters, because I was handling it from cradle to grave. So I didn't want to be, overwhelmed with shipping and everything. So that went well. Nonetheless, we took in about a quarter of what we would usually take in at our fundraiser in Oshkosh. So there will be a ripple effect from that. Kind of what Jim Wiersma and Kim McCarthy were voicing their concerns about. But that leads us to Oshkosh 2022. The contract was signed for that last fall. It looks like we're going to do it, right? If we're holding our in-person meetings, I think by February, we should be safe to go with the banquet, and especially the awards portion, which is what it's really about, and the fundraising. So like so many of our activities, it was just placed on hold for a year, and we'll be ready to go this fall, I think. And but a final word on the online auction format. It's something that I think many of the chapters should always keep in their quiver. It reaches out to people who could not otherwise get to a fundraiser. It makes it fun. People get bidding fever. Terry Cummings, he donated a day of fly fishing instruction, and it generated over $300 for one item. That's pretty good. So especially you chapters up north, where it's difficult to get people to travel great distances for a fundraiser, you should really explore this online format that Trout Unlimited provides for free. It's easy to use. It takes credit cards, and you really just have to ship items, and that's about it. The ink has dried on the contract for Oshkosh, so we're ready to go with that. Yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Scott. And thanks again for all your work on putting together that spring fundraiser. Something we had never done, and Scott really took the bull by the horns and jumped into it and organized it, and handled all the shipping. And so we owe a tremendous amount of gratitude to you for your efforts in making that successful. I heard maybe 2 complaints from people who had a hard time. They weren't able to log in and actually bid, but I don't know if others if that was a widespread issue or if that was just a couple of, instances or whatever. But I've heard a sprinkling of that from other TU chapters who've used the online platform too, that once in a while, people have a hard time navigating the system and actually getting registered to make bids. But
it's a little confusing.
Bidders, so
yeah. And he asked that I throw his name out. A very generous bidder was on there. David Wall, W-A-H-L. He owns the Wall Hair Clipper Company out of Sterling, Illinois. He's a member of TU, and he was having fun bidding. Let's just put it that way. And so next time you're getting a haircut, that includes you, Mike. You can think of David Wall.
He's my barber. I got him to thank for this. So he saved me an awful lot of money on haircuts over the last 20 years. That and my hereditary genes. So. With that, I will say, if anybody's interested in helping out with planning for the banquet next February, I think it's going to be, we expect it to be probably, we're hoping it breaks all records as far as attendance and fundraising efforts go. It's going to be great to get everybody back in person together again. It's going to be so good to see everybody and to celebrate together all of our accomplishments. So if you're interested in helping out, please reach out to Scott and let him know that you'd like to help out with the banquet committee. We could certainly use help. So thank you. For that,
okay, I gotta go. We'll see you.
Excellent. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. Heidi, I got you up next. Do you want to give us an update on the diversity initiative?
Yes, I have nothing to tell you. This is what I can tell you. Nobody responded to my last Wisconsin Trout article, which is not entirely to be unexpected. But I was really hoping that somebody would read that and be like, oh yeah, I have these same questions about diversity. Then you pair that with my county, which just took on a resolution that says that diversity is not an issue and we should not talk about it. And then my hometown, which just turned down the idea of a community for all. So like Wausau's in a big cluster too. So diversity wise, I have been feeling a little disheartened. But this will ebb and flow. I know that my morale will boost. I finished at the university, so my grades are submitted. So now I'm, a little less stressed. And Terry Cummings just helped me get my groove back, and we caught some trout, and that was great. So diversity wise, I have Melissa and I have Hannah from Madison area, and so we've got the three of us, and that's a good group. But what I think I need, and you guys probably all know this is like not new, is that we need to talk to people specifically, like one-on-one, and ask them if they would help us with this. And I don't know all of the TU people in the state. So I need you guys to help me think of people that would be really good to join this committee. I'm a super busy person, so this is not a committee that meets every week. I mean, we're gonna meet a couple times a year. It's not gonna be a giant time commitment. But I just need some help finding the right people that are interested in helping us tackle diversity. And I know that it's a tricky issue and also like politically loaded. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be here in TU, but I know that the talk around diversity seems to have some, I don't know, controversy maybe that's not the right word, but something about it. And communications wise, I think this summer is when I'm going to get these meetings scheduled, Zoom meetings, to talk with chapter leaders about chapter communications, give them some tips, and all the stuff that I have just sitting here to share. So this summer I'll be scheduling those.
Sounds great. Heidi, we should talk about maybe just doing we have our Talking Trout, platform that we're running the first Wednesday of the month. I've got an opening in August. If you wanted to maybe put together a presentation for chapter, focused towards chapters and how they communicate to the members, we could dedicate a night to that. I think that would be
Let's check the date on that, and we'll make that happen.
Okay.
Also, totally unrelated to this, I caught my first tarpon on the fly, and it was magical. And Teddy was there to witness it, and that was also magical. And then all day, the rest of the day, he told every stranger that we saw, "Mama caught a big fish." And so that was great because I really couldn't brag myself, but he so I want to take him everywhere with me. And so that was good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. And I should just mention, folks, if you have folks within your chapter who are working on diversity issues or, women's initiatives and things like that, it would be great to have them connect with Melissa and Heidi and Hannah and the work that they want to get started. And ultimately, when we set up these committees at the state level, they're there to serve the chapters. So they're there to put their heads together and generate ideas that we can turn around as chapters and use to engage and diversify our membership. So they're there to support you. And if you have folks who are interested in doing that, let's get everybody together so that we're all not individually working on these issues, but collectively working on these issues for the benefit of all of our chapters. So thank you for your work in spearheading some of these initiatives, Heidi.
Well, any questions for me? What questions do you have for me, I should say? Can you hear the chaos in the other room? I'm so sorry.
All right.
This is my life now. This is where we are.
Well,
I'm watching all of my chaos out the window. So just run by and little flits of kids. Yep. Yeah.
So this is Gary from Kayaptawish. We've been successful recruiting some female board members. We have 3 currently, and one of them is kind of handling our diversity, although she's kind of turned her attention to Stream Girls. And but we had talked about adding some language to the bylaws because we had some vacancies, and contacted National, and decided to wait until till next year when that diversity came out that Lynn mentioned. So she might be someone to contact. But yeah, I mean, it's come up in our chapter, like how we recruit. And we've made a concerted effort, and we've been successful attracting, and they bring a whole, you know, the gals that we have bring a whole other perspective, which is really quite been quite, you know, useful to us and thinking things differently. So, but anyway, we can provide you those names. Maybe someone will step forward to work with you.
That would be great. Your chapter is one of the ones that I know of that is like really advanced in this area. So,
all right.
So that's cool. I would love to be connected with them. Yeah, diversity for organizations. I mean, I do this with a lot of my consulting clients right now. It's not just like because it's like a token word, like we need to diversify because we're supposed to. Like there are many reasons to do it. One of which is exactly what you said, in that more people from different backgrounds bring different perspectives that make you stronger in general. More ideas, more creativity, and it also helps with longevity because, I mean, our organization is aging, and you know we want to diversify so that we can ensure that there are people that will carry on this legacy for us when we're gone.
Well, that was also two of the gals are I would consider quite a bit younger, and so you know getting young folks is another challenge, and so that it's been trying to make an effort. It's tough.
Mm-hmm. I use that line to try to get all of your secret fishing spots out of you. Is that who can protect your favorite stream if no one knows where it is? I will protect it if you just tell me where it is. Here's my gazetteer. Just make an X right there. I'll add it. So if any of you guys are concerned about your favorite secret spots not being protected, just, you know, send me a message and I'll make sure I got
I'm
your back.
still trying to figure that out.
Melissa,
Okay,
do you have something to add?
Yeah, I do. Let me just turn video on here. Okay, I moved to a different room. So yeah, I'm just going to share a couple of observations from my personal perspective about this. And that's just like being we started a sort of a working group within our chapter on diversity initiatives. And we've met several times and we had a lot of ideas. And I think really where it comes down to for me is I see it very hand in hand with just the discussions around engagement and activity and focus. Like, what are we doing as a chapter? And like, I think that I agree with all of the above, but really when it comes to like recruiting people to be involved with us as a chapter and as an organization, you know, I think our chapter, it seems like I'm new to it, and Bob and Kevin have been with the chapter longer, but it seems to me like we're in a kind of a transition or a lull. Like there's energy among some membership to like be more or do more or like be more engaged in the work of conservation and engaging community and just outdoor, you know, being outdoors and all of the things. You know, but there's also like, we're a very large, geographically large chapter, and it's hard for people to like come together physically and do, you know, so I think we're just trying to figure out, there's a lot of things simultaneously, and we have about like a handful or two of, you know, active people, like members who are like trying to create events, do meetings, do advocacy, get people involved, very small group of people. And so I feel like that having this like separate committee that's focused on diversity and equity and inclusion feels to me personally very artificial and false. I feel like it's very much of a bandwagon and right now, and I think that these things, they have to be done intentionally and front and center, but they also have to develop and evolve organically. And I see for our chapter, I see that that organic development of like, well, what are we going to do as a chapter? What's our focus? I mean, I think we really need to sit down as leadership in the chapter and develop a more of a strategic plan or direction as to like, do we want to take this organization somewhere, or do we want to just like be what we are, you know, now? And so I feel like the discussions and the focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion have to be part of like this regrouping of who we are as what we're doing as a chapter. And like, and that means what kind of projects do we want to be involved with? Do we want to be focusing on how are we going to get the conservation message out there? And there's individual initiatives that we can be doing. Like I'm pursuing starting a women's clinic, just a one-day women's clinic for our region. Been talking with Tina. I'm going to present to our board, you know, next week. And, you know, we've been talking, I don't know where we're at right now. I mean, this isn't a report back, but on some youth initiatives with Northland and some other stuff that I want to pursue with Red Cliff. And so I feel like there are ways that we as a chapter and that all chapters can just think through who are we engaging, what are we doing, what activity, and start building that without having like a separate committee, which to me just feels, especially when you have, you know, like 10 active people and 5 of them are in the committee. You know what I mean? It's like the 5 of them are on both the board and the committee. It's like we're all doing the same stuff. So I just wanted to share that because it's been a bit of a struggle for me personally. And I also, as a state council membership, everyone that's here, I think it's really important to also hear that way of thinking about organizing around this stuff, even though I know there's like probably 10 reasons that someone can present to me as to why we need to have a separate committee. But I just, you know, I feel like we have to make our own way in this thing. So I wanted to put that out there, that I don't think we should think of this as like this one, we have to all do it this way. We all have to have a diversity committee. We, you know, I just don't. So that's my bit.
Totally.
Which was what I texted you is too much for text.
Yeah, right. And you know, this is one of those things that some of you guys come from chapters that are thriving, and some of us come from chapters that are, you know, swimming along and barely surviving. And so when it comes to active people, sometimes adding another committee is too much. But one of the things that I think is going to help us is giving chapters ideas on how to integrate diversity into what they're already doing. So just different ways to rethink what you're already doing to make it more welcoming to people. So yeah, that's exactly on the money. I don't know that most chapters are in a place to add a diversity committee at the chapter level right now. But trying to start with these smaller things. You're right.
And starting with like where we are, like geographically and demographically, I think also makes it really, you know, just every chapter is a little bit unique in that way. I mean, I think it's probably a true statement that all chapters would benefit from a more youthful engaged membership and a more genderly diverse membership and a more ethnically diverse. I mean, we would all benefit from that, but we all have like different situations too. Some are more near urban areas, some are in or have urban areas within them, others don't. Like there's all kinds of different kinds of opportunities. So yeah, just working with people to think through how we can just do what we're doing in a more inclusive and equitable way, I think is really the way to go.
Jim, I see your hand up. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm the president of Clearwater, and we do not have a diversity, and we're not going to. And the reason for it is we've been bringing on young people. We added 3 more young board members, and if you want to see what they did, go to Wisconsin Clearwater TU, the YouTube channel, and look at Chainsaws and Fire, and you will see a drone video that was well produced by these 3 young guys. And so we're using technology. I accidentally found Stream Girls and called Len Beck. And one day later, after asking our vice president, a 17-year-old girl took it on, and we just filled it in. I think you just need to look at your chapter, look at who you have, and work on little projects, and quit jumping from, I got to have a veterans program, I got a diversity program. from the YouTube channel, it was posted, I think it was the 1st of March, we have added 66 new members. It was just, they saw what we did to a stream. And if you go look at it, it was done quite, first of all, the person who had a drone has a web company, and then 2 other people were, one was a teacher and the other one did the narration. And to reach, old guys can't reach out to young people. Okay, you need young stuff to reach young people to reach out to young people. We're the tools they like. Old guys like to talk on the phone. Young people like to use email, text, or electronics. So that's why we didn't go do all the diversity things. Well, in the last 18 months, our chapter has grown by 159 people, and it was by using technology. And unfortunately, the last 66 of this year, there was only 2 women. So if we don't have them, we don't have them, but we're not going to waste our time going out and pinpointing on one specific area when we're finding other things that are working well for us and continue to generate a board that is under 50 years old and not 65. That's my bitch. You can take it from there.
Yeah, I think, you bring up some good points, and there's certainly different ways to go about it. And there's different ways when we talk about diversifying your chapter, that there's different ways of what that looks like. So, and it's going to be different for each chapter because our chapters are individual chapters and they're all unique. And it sounds like, maybe by skipping the committee, that's okay for your chapter right now, because it sounds like you're finding other ways to engage those folks that you haven't been engaging with before in the community. So that's great that you're finding new ways to bring them in. At some point, I think you would find a benefit to maybe having maybe some of those younger members would find a benefit to having a diversity committee or some folks to work on that. It might even grow even more what your chapter's been doing. So, and from our state council level, we look at the work that Heidi and Melissa and other folks are doing. Like we want to have all the heads at the table putting in the ideas to give the chapters as much information as they can and give you as many ideas as you can to help engage your members and grow your membership.
That was the big issue because our board age was 64. And now we have 4 new members that are all under 45. And that was a struggle to find those folks because we had to convince them that they were not going to have to put in 300 to 500 hours a year, maybe 20 to 30 be on board meetings and pick a project. So now we built that core. And so that now we have to find that core is diversified enough to go out and add more or bring on other programs. So I think the main problem is playing youth issues because we're getting too damn old and we're getting too frustrated and we're getting tired. Oh, that's age. So we need to and technology is taking this stuff over. I mean, the biggest commercial on TV right now is a Ford Lightning truck. So, all that is changing and we have to change with that scenario. And so our approach was finding younger people to get them on the board. And we look for people who actually understood technology because we could find younger people who wanted to be on the board, but all they thought they were going to do is learn about the fishing holes. And we changed that approach. So that's what we're starting. Now, if it doesn't work in a couple of years, well, then the next group of board members will have to work on that. But right now, it seems to be flowing towards where we want it to grow, and we go from there. And we have projects. When you're talking about the Friends Grant, we our projects that are already in the books, we're already working on 22 and 23. We don't work on 21. I mean, that's already done because if we're using NRCS money or anybody else's money, it's already in the books. So we got to be a year out or a year and a half out. So that's our philosophy. We'll let you know if the years if it works. Okay.
Well, I appreciate the insights, and I'm glad to hear that you've got some younger folks engaged in chapter activities. That's always a good thing.
I'm going to challenge you to say that you're probably already doing diversity because you're doing that. Because making yourself welcoming to more people is making yourself welcoming to more people. And so broadening the way that you communicate with, you know, the youth or the new women that you have being involved. I mean, that's a part of what we're trying to do. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, when people think of diversity, I think we don't do a good job of communicating what that means to us as an organization. And so it's not just gender diversity and it's not just age diversity. It is, you know, generational diversity. It is your experience level diversity. It is your ethnicity. It is your religion. Making sure that we are welcoming to all different types of people. So not just like, yes, we get more women, that's awesome. And yes, we need more kids, but we also need some newer anglers. We need people that don't have a lot of money. We need people that have a lot of money. Someone has to fund us, right? We need people who are experienced to teach the people who aren't experienced. So, I mean, this is a part of a larger conversation, but I think that those types of initiatives, and I mean, putting the energy into that is a great thing. And I'm glad that that's working out for your chapter.
I got it.
Oh, it's okay.
Anybody else have questions for Heidi?
Hi, Daddy.
All right.
We just got an applesauce explosion. This is perfect timing. Sorry, guys. I gotta go.
Thanks, Heidi. Appreciate your work. So, the next on our list, Education Committee Youth Camp update. Lynn, I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. So as Mike stated earlier, yes, we are definitely going on with the camp. We're scheduled for Thursday, August 19th through Sunday, the 22nd. And I really love to report that we are full. We have 20 kids. I'd hope that we were carrying over 11 from last year, but we've been full since about the first week of May. So kudos and thanks everybody for getting their names and everything to me. It's been kind of a long haul. I've been working with TU National and a camp on protocols for COVID. TU National, I've had 5 coordinator meetings with them. Each of them were probably about between an hour and a half long. So it was a lot of time. Basically, TU National wanted to, I don't want to say dictate, but wanted to get out their protocols that they'd like the camps to follow. We were working on a waiver form. Georgia group put out a new waiver form that covers a lot of the COVID stuff, and also puts out there a spot that we never had for doctor's information. So we will have something on the kids, and this will be going out to all of the kids here in the next week for them to sign and be part of their regular paperwork. One of the things we've been waiting for, you know, you guys haven't seen anything on other than a couple of little blurbs, and there's going to be a request in the or there was a request in the old last Wisconsin Trout about mentors and volunteers and everything for helping out. What we wanted to do is, I know there are a lot of people aren't comfortable because of what's happening with the vaccinations or where they are with counts in their areas or where we are at in Wapaka. So now that things have, I don't want to say kind of relaxed a little bit, but seem to be going in the right way, we'll be sending out an email asking for volunteers and touching base with everybody from the last, well, 2 years ago, basically. So if any of your members are wondering, you know, email them. We do need people to help out. So hopefully everybody will jump right in and go on to it. One cool thing that the camp has done for us is they have a big meeting hall. It's huge. It's where they hold like graduations and stuff like that, and a lot of their larger meetings. And they've opened it up to us, which means then now that we won't be, you know, all crammed into a 20 by 35-foot room, and we'll have some area to move around and keep some spacing and stuff. So that should help with a lot of the people, and hopefully if anybody still has reservations, it'll help eliminate some of those too. So other than that, we're going to run forward with our same curriculum. We're actually splitting up some of the groups to keep them smaller and more easier to work with. And looking forward to another great year. So again, thank you to all the chapters that have sent kids. And thank you for everybody and the donations that they sent. There'll be a more in depth in the Wisconsin TU article, but we've gotten quite a bit, as Gary alluded to, that we have a lot more donations this year, monetary donations. And every little bit helps and keeps everything going. So thanks everybody. And we had one family member that their kid is coming, and Graham put me in touch with them, but they donated 4 big boxes of lures and baits and like rods. And so I had fun categorizing all of that. I mean, we have enough, if we hand out 20 of each for each year, we have enough for the next 4 or 5 years. So pretty cool. And Graham, thanks. And I guess with that, I'll kind of let Greg get into his thing.
Anybody have questions for Lynn about the youth camp before we move on to Trout in the Classroom?
This is Melissa. Of course, I have a question. You can imagine how my college professors loved having me in class. In any case, Lynn, I just have one question regarding the like the equipment purchases or the equipment that you all use for your for the youth camp, the annual youth camp. I'm just wondering if, as a chapter, and this isn't only to Lynn, I don't know, Mike, whoever, I don't know, as a chapter, I'm not sure what our cash is like as far as you know, equipment if we wanted to do a youth clinic or something like that. But is there like a statewide, is there any opportunity for a chapter to sort of borrow a cache of, you know, basic equipment, not necessarily the disposable, like the flies and stuff, but the like rods and reels and line that could be borrowed if we wanted to host something like that, so that we didn't each chapter have to develop that kind of a cache?
Absolutely. We go through the Oshkosh DNR, and they each year supply us with 20 fly rods and 20 spinning rods. So, I mean, and they all come, you know, completely spooled out and everything. Bob Hazy is fantastic with going through the rods and make sure they're all set for us when the camp starts, and also goes through them at the end when we take them back to the DNR. But I think your local DNR area should have it, because they all have youth programs and they all have equipment that can go out for chapter use, I believe.
Yeah, right. Thank you. That's a good reminder. And they also have that, I can't remember what it's called, but the R3 program that they're really pushing to get kids fishing. Well, not only kids, but just to get more people fishing. And so, yeah, thank you for that. That's a really good, that's a good tip.
Yeah, and I would say if the DNR can't help you out, I would maybe start with checking with your neighboring chapters to see what they have, and maybe it's possible to borrow, or maybe you can get a couple of volunteers from their chapter to come to your event and, you know, provide some of the equipment to borrow. But we do not have like we don't have statewide, like we don't have 30 fly rods on hand that chapters can check out or anything like that.
Doesn't LL Bean still do a gear giveaway every year through Trout Unlimited, where you can sign up and you can get 10 fly rod packages for these kind of events?
Yes, they do, but you pretty much have to have it in by January, because by February and March, they're already expended all of their list. It's really hard if you don't get everything in by the first week of the first of the year, a lot of these places do not have anything available because so many chapters and organizations hit them up for this product.
But that could be something that a chapter could sign up for later this year, and they could get a cache of equipment that they can use for these kind of events.
Actually, yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Thanks for that, Graham. All right. I think we're gonna turn it over. I got Greg Olson here. He's our statewide coordinator for Trout in the Classroom. He's gonna kind of give us an update on the program. So Greg, the floor is yours.
All right. Thanks. I've just become the president of CIAP, and it's my first state council meeting. So it's nice to meet everyone. Although I'm coming to you from the Wild Rivers territory. I'm in the Drummond Library, so we have a cabin up here. And I was just going to say, Melissa, our chapter has a bunch of fly rods and reels and equipment. So I'm up here, pretty much every other weekend. So if you did come up with an event, and we don't have an event going on, I could possibly get you equipment too if you let me know. So. Yeah, in terms of Trout in the Classroom update, Mike's sent out an email a couple times now, just kind of outlining some of the changes recently. This past year, the DNR didn't provide us any eggs just because of COVID, but the year before they did, and so you could get eggs from the DNR shipped if you wanted, or you could pick them up, but they were absolutely free, and they did not require any fish testing, which is usually a big expense. And they want to continue that now this year. They were kind of overwhelmed with the response, and so been working with the DNR, and they asked that we set up a what they call it, Mike, a gift fund. If it's under a certain amount, you can just set up a gift account with the DNR that they could pull from, because the shipping boxes, the styrofoam coolers, and then the shipping costs, they figure was about $30 per shipment. And Mike's agreed to do that, and then the chapters would pay this fund back. And so the DNR wouldn't have to go to each individual chapter and try to keep track of who paid, who didn't, et cetera. So and then they also wanted an idea of how many chapters would be requesting eggs for the next school year, because like I said, they were kind of overwhelmed. And so Mike sent out an email a couple times, and I've heard back now from, I don't know, maybe 6 chapters. And I don't know, I got to think that we had more out there. They couldn't provide me with how they were overwhelmed, what actual number that was. So just asking again, if you have not responded to me via Mike's email, and you've got tick chat programs out there, and you're going to be requesting eggs for next year, if you could please email me at driftless23@gmail.com, that'd be great. Just because we're setting up things with the DNR, and like I said, they'd like to know just what they're in for again for the next school year. So, are there any questions or comments on that? Okay. Well, like I said, if you could.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate that. Yeah. So, like I said, you covered it pretty well. Like, we'd like to set up this kind of gift account that the DNR can kind of pull from, and we can kind of monitor that. But before we go ahead and do that, we need to know how many schools are going to be accessing that. So, trying to figure out if we need to put enough money in there to cover shipping to 10 schools, or is it 30 schools or 40 schools? So if you guys are, you're doing Trout in the classroom, or even if your TU chapter does not have a TIC program going right now, we would like to know that as well, just so that we can hear from all the chapters what they think those requests might be. And then I think from the council's level, we'll be in a better position to approach the DNR and say, okay, if you can, we're probably going to be asking for eggs for, 25 schools, then we can figure out logistics and things like that. And we'd like to do that in the summer and get that all straightened away so that, by the fall that everybody knows what's going on. So if you could help Greg and I with that, we'd appreciate it. Any other questions, TIC wise, youth education? Sounds good. Next item on the agenda is the membership committee update. I know Paul Cruz was out on I think he's heading up a stream restoration workday this morning, so he's not able to be with us. But I pulled the roster this morning and I was pleasantly surprised. There's well over 6,500 members on there for the state council, which is I don't know if I've ever pulled a roster and seen it over 6,000. So we've done a pretty big increase in the last year or so, which is great to see. And then I guess the onus is on us to as chapter leaders to go out and engage all these new members and let them know that there's volunteer opportunities within their local chapters to help out, whether it's a kids fishing day or a habitat restoration workshop or whatever you guys have going on. Let's try to make an effort to reach out to these folks and bring them into the fold. So the more people we get working on this, on our work, the easier it is for everybody to do. So that being said, I think I'll turn it over next to get Todd Franklin with an update on Trout and the awards committee.
Everybody, not too much with Trout. I'm working on the summer issue right now, so deadline is June 10th, so I'm kind of just waiting and watching for everybody's chapter reports and articles and such. So send me your stuff. I'm looking forward if you haven't already. If you have, I appreciate it. I always get a lot of extra copies when we get it printed. I've reduced that in last year a little bit since we didn't have chapters weren't having any live events where they were distributing copies. So yeah, but starting with this summer issue, I'm going to start getting more back into having some of those extras on. Basically, they're available if you can get them. I'm in the Madison area. If you need a bundle for an event, we can try and figure out logistics. Maybe you've got a member that comes this way, or maybe we've got someone down here that heads up your way for fishing or what have you, and could bring up some copies. So always keep that in mind. They're available. Hopefully by the October meeting in Viroqua, I'll have a fresh off the press of the fall issue, and we can get back to what we normally did, and I'll bring those along, and you guys can help distribute them around the state, use them at events, and get them to your local fly shops or wherever great publications can be found. So any questions on Trout from anybody? Excellent. I'm also the awards chair, as you may know. Thanks again to everybody who helps on the awards committee. A lot of you are in this meeting today. We had a good batch of awardees this year. Unfortunately, we weren't able to present them the awards live at the annual awards banquet in Oshkosh. So I think we're planning to invite this year's award winners to the banquet in Oshkosh, and we'll figure out the logistics on how that's all going to work without making the night go along too long. We'll figure that out, but I hope everybody agrees that it would be nice to at least extend the invitation to these winners from this year to be recognized in person in Oshkosh next year. So I guess that's about it on awards. Maybe just start thinking and keeping your eyes and ears open for potential award winners for next year. These nominations always come from the chapters and those of you who are in the know of special people who deserve recognition. So I guess that's about it. Anybody have any questions? Excellent.
Thanks, Todd. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'll just say one thing about the awards that I wanted to bring up. In the past, we've had one of our members, Clint Burns, he's made a gold net that we've given out many years now. Clint passed away earlier this spring. He's one of our, but I don't know, he was a member for like 40 some years. I think he was there when a lot of these chapters started up, longtime member. And so he will be greatly missed. And we're still trying to figure out, what to do with that gold net award, whether that's something that we want to ask another net maker in Wisconsin to maybe pick that up and carry on the tradition, or how we want to deal with that. So I think I'll just put it out to the community. If you folks have any ideas, somebody who makes nets who might be, I know we've got a couple of ideas that we've generated there, but if you have some ideas on ways that we can maybe keep this going, I think there were some suggestions about maybe we rename that the Clint Burns Gold Net Award. So something that I think the awards committee will take up this year in our discussions is how to honor his legacy and keep moving that forward. So just want to put that out there. Next up, we had the Veteran Service Partnership update. I think Mike Berta has been our state council coordinator for that program for a number of years. His health is starting to decline a little bit, and the leader from the Madison area program, Mike Johnson, and the leader from the Milwaukee area program, Matthew Cade, have both approached me about possibly taking over duties from Mike Berta and acting as co-chairs for that project. And so I think in the coming weeks, we're all going to have a conversation with Mike Berta and Mike Johnson and Matthew Cade and kind of talk about where we want to go to move forward on this initiative. There's still plans. I don't think we're doing a veterans trip this summer, just because it was weird with COVID to plan things. So we're going to hold that off for another year. And we're going to do that again in Hayward in 2022. I know the council is holding on to some funds that were set aside for that specific veterans outing. So I think there's $2,500 or $2,700 in the bank account that we're going to hold on to and make sure that gets used next year and gets put to good use. But that's kind of where we're at with veteran stuff. I know the Madison area, the Southern Wisconsin chapter started hosting their Veterans on the Fly events again this spring, and we did a round, and it was great to see veterans out on the water again. So I'm hoping some other chapters are starting to get active in those regards as well. So if you're interested in doing, veterans programs in your area, reach out to me. I can put you in touch with either of the Mikes or Matt, and we can, kind of discuss what's worked and maybe what hasn't in different areas. Oh, we got Mike Johnson on. All right, awesome. Sorry, buddy, I didn't see you at first on the guest list, but if you want to take a minute and speak to what you've been doing in Madison or what you'd like to see out of the Hayward trip, I'll give you the floor.
Well, thank you very much. Hi, guys. Mike Johnson. Sorry, my voice we're fighting colds here in this house right now on such a sunny day. But, the biggest thing I want to say, well, first, thank you to Chuck for our new hats. Very appreciate that donation. It's fantastic. I always want to buy rods before we buy hats. And Chuck said we're buying hats.
You're welcome.
So thank you very much, Chuck. I got a couple here on the side for you already. But the biggest thing with our veterans program, one of my goals statewide is to make sure we don't need a committee from every chapter, but I would like at least a contact from every chapter that if we do have a veteran that's looking to get involved, the biggest thing with these guys is they're born leaders. I mean, they stood up, they served their country, and we really have this untapped resource of volunteers that are ready to step up and ready to get involved, and bringing them in with just learning how to work, becoming a little bit of a community. We operate in Madison chapter kind of like a club, super informal, and I think by allowing some of that to naturally come about, we can really up our levels with some serious leaders in our community. So I would really like to see, like statewide, at least a contact person. We've been working in Madison here with a group called RWB, Red, White, and Blue, Team Red, White, and Blue. Speaking of technology, they have a fantastic app that they put on all kinds of outdoor events, and they've been including our events. And then that's a great resource. You know, don't think of yourself as a standalone in our veterans group. You know, it's now turned from a veteran service partnership to just TU service partnership to include first responders. So, you know, it can be whatever you want to make it to be, but I would really like to see at least one person stand up just as a contact. We have some great resources, myself, Matt Cade. We just have some really great ideas and information and gear. If someone needs gear, we can get gear out to them. So it can be whatever you want. I don't want to make it any kind of rules. You know, we operate as veterans on the fly. It can be whatever you want to make it. So I really statewide, I'd just like to see at least one contact person from each chapter that can reach out and use us as resources. And the biggest thing is it can be whatever you want it to be. You know, that's all I want to say about that. We're getting back into the VAs. We're going to hopefully by the fall be allowed to go back in the VAs and tie flies with their opening up to volunteers again. But just know that we have a program. We have some great ideas that we've done in the past that have worked well for us, and just use us as a resource to that. But again, you don't need to make a committee. Just a contact person would be, you know, my goal. We have gear and information and all kinds of programs that work. So use us, please.
That's great. Thanks, Mike, for speaking out to that. And again, as all you chapter leaders, you know, you can go on the TU National website and make sure, you know, it shouldn't just be for the service partnership coordinator, but if you could take a moment at some point over the next couple of weeks or so and go on the TU National website and just make sure all the leaders are updated for your chapter. So we have the correct contacts, you know, for those specific positions. That would be great. And maybe look for where there's gaps, where if you don't have somebody identified as, maybe you don't have somebody identified as a service partnership coordinator, but maybe there's somebody on your board or you know, some chapter leader who would be willing to like sit in and kind of serve as that point of contact. You know, like Mike said, that would really help us to push out information and that. So please take some moments over the next couple of weeks to go in there and make sure all that information is up to date. We're at the top of the hour. Let's take one more 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll wrap up with our ad hoc CAFO committee update. They've got some important news to share with you, and so let's take a quick break for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back and wrap up with that. Okay. Thanks. Meeting. Next item up for business is an update from our ad hoc CAFO committee, which Lynn Beck has been leading along with some other folks that I see in the call. I know Jason and Michael Williamson and Kim McCarthy and others have been really heavily involved in that. So Lynn, the floor is yours, and give us an update.
Awesome, Mike, and I'll make it pretty quick here because there's a lot of stuff that we won't get into. First off, you know, I got to thank everybody, you know, that not only the guys that Mike just mentioned, but Bill Huff has been helping us out, and Tim Fraley, along with Mike Coor, also been. So a special thanks to you guys. And then we actually had a wonderful surprise. Bob Selk, a retired DNR guy, really helped us out. So a big thank you goes out to him. I feel we put together a pretty good paper so far, actually a great paper. And especially in the short time we've been working on it. We've broken the paper down into several areas. And it's kind of funny, what started out as a quick 2 or 3 page paper has grown into quite the packet. So I believe you guys will be all pleasantly surprised when we get through with everything right now. But the areas that we're touching on, basically we're the CAFO laws. We cover the siting and operating laws for the CAFO farms. A lot of the information we got from the DNR and DADCAP. And also it'll cover your local government. And what I mean by that is a local government plays a big part in stopping a CAFO from coming to your area. And when we roll that out in October, you'll see, because I'll really get into an in-depth part of it. And the great thing about that is Bob Selk, the DNR guy that used to do the citing and a lot of the work on the legal side of it, Bob Selk is the one that wrote the paper for us, or wrote this part of it. So none of us felt comfortable about doing it, and it was wonderful to have him step in and take care of it. Then there's a part in there about getting to know your DNR county regional specialist. Each region has their own CAFO specialist that you should probably get into, and we'll tell you how to contact that within this paper. And we also put together an approach to dealing with a proposed CAFO. Enforcement, what you're going to need to do to try and enforce any CAFOs that fall into the part about being non-compliant, excuse me. And we've got an article or an area in there about guidance from TU National that chapters and councils will need to follow because of the 501c3 status. And so when you're going to go against an issue, and then also for forming partnerships. We have, and part of it is the impacts of CAFOs on local health and safety. And then to end it, we have an executive summary, basically to help you understand some of the parts of this paper. We realize a lot of people aren't going to follow the legality issues, much less contacting people and who you need to talk to and everything. So, and everybody has contributed on this, and Jason was a big contributor on a lot of stuff. And Kim, a big thank you goes out to you for basically putting all of our ideas into the paper and getting it sorted out. And so a lot of hard work by everybody. So if you see these guys or know them, give them a big thank you. And especially in October, when we do get the final paper together, you guys will be pleasantly pleased. And I know Mike has gotten a chance to see with the efforts and everything. So with that, I guess there isn't a lot I can answer as far as questions because I don't have the paper in front of me, but I just wanted to let you know the parts that we have covered, and we feel like we've covered every issue that's out there. The one thing I'm going to ask all of you to do as a chapter leader is if you guys are working with any partners in your area, whatever issues, whether it be a water issue, logistic issue, or anything else, please get those names to us. What we're going to do is on the partnership part is we'd like to list all the partners that are available to our chapters by region that they can contact and maybe form a coalition to either fight a CAFO coming to the area or to at least keep an eye on them. We're not expecting every chapter to do it alone. And as we have all found out, that partners are a huge asset to us. So if you have anybody or you're working with anybody, or even send me a list of any type of a partnership, whether it's a coalition, whether it's another conservation group, send me their names. We may not have them on, and we'd love to add them to our list. So, and that's pretty much the only ask we're asking from you guys for this. So if you could do that, that'd be great. Hopefully all of you have my email address. If not, contact Mike, and then Mike can forward everything onto me, and we'll get it into the paper. And one thing nice is we will have we'll send it out to everybody, but it will be downloadable off of the Wisconsin Council website at the end. And especially with the list of partners and everything, we'll have that up there in a separate PDF. So it's not part of the paper, so you can download that. And the nice thing about all of this is we have in each section, we'll have actual websites that you can go to ask or find out any answers you need that we can't supply. So we're thinking it's pretty thorough and it's looking pretty good. So I guess, Mike, do you want me to take any questions at all on it, or you want to just let it run from there?
Yeah, I will just say, after the meeting, I will email a PDF of the draft version of this to everyone so that you all can get a chance to take a look at it. If you have suggestions, you know, by all means, take a look at the draft version, get them back to Lynn or myself at some point this summer. And then our plan is to formalize it over the summer, make any tweaks that we need to make, and then present it to the chapter and the council as a resource to use in the future at the October meeting. So again, the paper is meant to be a resource for the chapters. So your input as a chapter leader, you know, we value that greatly. So, and we tried to keep that in mind as we were writing this, you know, trying to think like if we were a new chapter leader and who's not familiar with, you know, CAFO regulations, and all of a sudden we find out that there's one in our area, like where would we go to start learning about the process of dealing with it? And so we tried to think about it from that level and put it into a digestible format where you can go and gather the information that you need to get yourself up to speed on how these things are managed on the landscape. So I think the committee's done a great job of putting it together, and we're pretty excited to present it to you. I'll open it up to any of the other, I don't know, Jason, Michael, Kim, if you guys had anything you wanted to add to what Emmett said, or Tim Fraley too. Sorry, I missed you, buddy, earlier when I was naming folks who had helped out on that. If you have anything to add, feel free to do that. Or if anybody's got questions about it too, we could talk a little bit about it.
So this is Fred from Cooley region. There is a hearing about a pig feeding CAFO coming up on June 10th here. And I assume it'd be reasonable to use that document as a guide for our response in the interim. But if anybody's interested in that, let me know and I'll get the information out to you.
What county was that one in again, Fred? Is that the one in Crawford?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. I was looking to try and see here.
It's Crawford County.
Crawford?
Yep, just north of the river a little bit.
So if people are interested, I can get you the information on it. You can attend a virtual or write a response afterwards that would be included.
Thank you.
Lynn, it's Jim. Do we have a count on statewide number of CAFOs?
I do have one, but I'd have to go back in the thing. If I'm not mistaken, and Jason, you may correct me, there's over 357 or 377 CAFOs, if that's the right count that I come up with.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact number. I will say what I do remember is 90% are dairy, and we get about 13 more a year on average. So I don't remember exact number, but somewhere just shy of 400, I think.
It might be wise to publish that out to the chapters just so they understand how many there are and where they're typically located, just to raise awareness, I think.
It's in the document. But.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we tried to be thorough with everything that we're speaking on and everything that we put together. We'll have websites to go to back up either what was said or for you to find more information on it. Like I said, we went from a 2 to 3 page that we thought it would be, and it's probably close to 8 or 9 by the time we get done. So it's pretty in depth, and it's hopefully going to be very useful. So.
All right. Anybody have any other questions or comments on that?
Yeah, this is Melissa, just a comment. A few years ago, I had heard about or had learned about these farmer-led watershed organizations. I think a lot of them were being organized down in the Driftless area out of UW Extension. And I'm just wondering, well, just a quick question or just a comment maybe about the partnering, how or if TU has partnered with any of those. And also in the bigger scheme of things, I'm really excited about this resource you all have put out, and especially the like the chapter partnerships. I think that'll be really helpful. But I'm wondering too if there's how much emphasis there is, or if at all, in just the idea of working with farmers who already, you know, or I guess farmers is so misleading, with companies, you know, that are running these CAFOs to make sure to be doing the right thing, but to be not from the regulatory standpoint, but really from a conservation standpoint, like building partnerships with potential violators or whatever, so that it becomes a win-win. So I just felt like that. I wanted to just put that out there because I think that's the most powerful way. I mean, we have a CAFO up here in Iron County that's been going through a DNR permitting process that the tribe Bad River has been opposing, but one of our chapter board members, you know, has worked with that, is familiar with that owner of that CAFO, and, you know, is not like he's like, they're doing all the right things. So, you know, I just wanted to introduce that nuance, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the document.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll maybe give folks on the committee a chance to respond if they want to.
Well, you know, as far as this paper, we're not writing it as we oppose CAFOs, more than the fact that there are, just like anything, there's a good spot for a CAFO and there's a bad spot for a CAFO. Where we're addressing here too, though, is like any dairies, I can't even think of the one over in the western part of the state that's had 2 spills and have just paid their fines and everything else. It's more or less to regulate or help regulate a bad CAFO. You know, when a CAFO puts in for, you know, you're not going to fight a CAFO from coming anywhere, because they have the opportunity, as long as, and we found this out through DADCAP and DNR, that as long as their paperwork is filled out accurately and on time and dots the I's and crosses the T's, there is no recourse but to basically approve that. Where it gets sticky for these CAFOs is local government. You know, the local government kind of holds the, kind of like the card in the hole. If they have enough stringent regulations for their county, that's where a good blockage would come from, would be your local government. And this is all pointed out in the paper, and we'll have ways to contact them, and you'll have to contact your local government. And if you don't have a CAFO in your county, contact them and make sure that it doesn't come to your county. That's the easiest way to say it.
Thanks, Glenn. Yeah, I think you bring up a really important point, Melissa, and that's, you know, something that the committee, like you said, to reiterate, we realize, like, we're not going to be able to stop a lot of these CAFOs, and like, we need to get past that part of it and figure out how we proactively change things on the ground and on the landscape. And I think, you know, one of those ways, like you mentioned, Melissa, is working with, you know, farmer-led coalitions and with the folks who want to do the right thing, and you can kind of start there, and we can figure out best practices. And I think we're going to have to, there's not going to be a silver bullet to this one. We're going to have to, you know, kind of work around the edges and keep chipping away and making small incremental improvements in the way things are done on the landscape to protect our resources. So all hands on deck, and you know, all ideas are welcome. And you know, I think from our approach to the state council level, we want to make sure that chapter leaders, when they go, you know, marching into some of these conversations, that they're at least armed with the tools or have the resources to be knowledgeable about how the system and the program is set up right now and how things work, and where you can have an influence and provide some input. So.
And I do want to add my thanks to Melissa's. This group has taken on the most complicated issue I think that we have. You know, we depend on farmers for a lot of our access, and farmers have been great partners, and we need to, on the one hand, make sure that we're good partners to them, and on the other hand, protect the resource. And it's just a thorny issue. So thank you for taking this on.
Yeah, appreciate that. Any other comments on this right now? Like I said, I'm sure all of you will have, questions and comments once you're actually able to see the document, and I will get that out to you shortly. All right, 12/27. Our next meeting, like I said, is going to be Saturday, October 2nd, first Saturday in October. We're going to be in Viroqua in person. I'm super pumped about that. It's going to be great to see everybody again. I haven't checked with the hospital yet to see if that lower level is going to be available or not, like we've done in years past. If it's not, I think I'll probably reach out to some of you local folks in that area and see if you have ideas on other places or locales that might be able to host a 30 to 40 person meeting in that area. But it's gonna be exciting to see everybody in person again. So we have the extended trout season, so there'll be some fishing opportunities as well, to get out and do some fishing in that area too. So that'll be good. Any other business before we adjourn? Hearing none, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn. Dale.
Thanks, Dale. Anybody want to second that?
Second, Michael.
Thanks, Michael. I'm starting to wonder. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
So moved. Thank you, folks.
folks.
Appreciate you taking the time on a Saturday morning to do this. And we'll be in touch and look forward to seeing you all out on the waters, hopefully this summer. And if not, we'll see you in Viroqua in October. Thank you.